The air is thick with the scent of wet earth, the kind that lingers long after a heavy rain. You can feel the texture of the ground beneath your feet, slimy, soft, uncertain. In the distance, a figure stirs, its silhouette barely visible through the fog. It moves, but does it know it's moving? This is the Swampman, a being created in an instant, formed by chance and circumstance, yet somehow it feels like more than just a random assembly of atoms. Its existence seems impossible. How could something so precise emerge from nothing but the world's carelessness? How could it come into being without cause, without intention? In the midst of this swamp, imagine that a man, real and full of memories, walks through the mud. He doesn't know that the ground beneath him will swallow him whole. The swamp consumes him, and in his place there rises a figure, a perfect replica of him. His body, his face, even the way he tilts his head. But here's the twist. This new figure, the Swampman, has none of the man's memories, no experiences, no awareness of who he was. It is just a copy, a creature of the moment, formed from the same materials as the man who once lived. Can it be said to be the same person? The question isn't just philosophical, it shakes the foundation of what it means to be you. If a man's body is recreated in the swamp, exactly as it was before, does the creature that emerges share the man's consciousness? Can it even feel, or does it only mimic what it believes consciousness should be? Imagine this figure walking out of the swamp. It speaks with the same voice, moves with the same fluidity, but its mind is empty. It has no history, no personal narrative. It is not the man who once lived. It has no memories to recall, no past to shape its future. The Swampman is a paradox, a copy of a man, yet a complete stranger. Its body is familiar, but its essence is not. It moves through the world, but does it understand it? Does it experience the same moments of awareness, or is it just a hollow shell, carrying the weight of a past it never lived? The Swampman doesn't know the difference. It doesn't question its existence. It is simply because it is. But you watching might wonder if something so identical can exist without a soul. What does it mean for everything else we define as real? What happens to the man who was lost? Where is his consciousness now? Is it truly gone, or does something of him persist in the world? The swamp gives birth to a new body, but does it erase the old self entirely? Does the old self fade away, or does it live on in fragments, scattered through time and space? You might think the Swampman can never be the same. It can never have the same thoughts, the same experiences, but in a strange way, it could be. It could wander, live, and feel as if it were the very person who vanished into the mud. How much of a self is tied to the body, and how much to the stories we tell ourselves? A body made anew does not guarantee a mind reborn. Yet, if we follow this line of thinking, it forces us to ask, where does identity truly reside? In our memories, our experiences, or in the threads that bind us to the world, even after we've disappeared? As the Swampman walks through the world, it may encounter people it once knew, places it once visited. It may remember nothing. It may feel as though nothing has changed, but can we ever truly know if it is the same person? Can we ever prove that consciousness doesn't vanish with the body, leaving only the illusion of continuity behind? The swamp is silent. It doesn't answer. The Swampman's steps echo, but they are not his steps. They belong to the world, to the strange continuity of existence. And yet, somewhere between the original and the copy, a question persists. If it's not the same man, then who is it? Each moment that passes seems to ask more questions. Each second spent wandering the swamp adds layers to the mystery, stretching it into the infinite. The Swampman is a riddle that cannot be solved, a paradox without an answer. It is the embodiment of everything we fear about existence, that identity might be fragile, that consciousness could be a fleeting illusion. What does it mean to be real, to be alive? If a man's body can be recreated, piece by piece, is he still the same, or is he gone forever, his essence lost in the swamp, leaving only a copy in his place? The Swampman's story never really ends. It is a story that unfolds again and again, with no clear beginning and no obvious end. It challenges the very idea of what it means to exist, and in doing so, it asks us to reconsider everything we hold dear about the self. As the fog swirls around the figure, it becomes clear that this is not just the story of one man. It's the story of every self, of every being that ever questioned who they were, what they are, and whether they could ever truly be anything more than a fleeting shadow in time. And in that question, we are all the Swampman. There is a machine in the corner of the room. Its hum is quiet, steady, almost soothing. A button awaits, as if daring you to press it. A soft light flickers. It promises something extraordinary, something impossible to be anywhere, instantly. To travel, not through space, but through the very fabric of being itself. You step into the machine. Your body, your mind, your thoughts, all stand ready to be dissolved, to be transferred, to be reborn elsewhere. And in that split second, when the world falls away, you wonder, will you still be you when it's over? The teletransportation paradox begins here, in this moment of hesitation. Imagine for a second that the machine scans every molecule of your body, every particle that makes you you. It analyzes, breaks down, disassembles, then it sends this information, this blueprint of your existence, across time and space, reassembling it at the other end. And when you step out, it's as if you've never moved. But here's the problem. The machine doesn't move you. It doesn't teleport your body. It destroys your original form and then recreates a copy of you. Every atom, perfectly replicated, assembled somewhere else. The question is the copy still you? The paradox stretches in unexpected directions. If your original self is obliterated in the process, then what of your consciousness? It's not the same body, not the same experience. Can you still say that it's you standing there on the other side, or is it just a replica, a perfect facsimile with no trace of your past, and yet the copy looks like you? It acts like you. It feels like you, but it didn't feel the fear or the anticipation of the moment. It never lived through the instant of transformation. The you who was destroyed is gone, without ever experiencing the transition. What happens to the person who never truly dies, yet is no longer the same? Now consider this: if the original you is gone, and a new version steps out of the machine, is that new version truly you? Does continuity of consciousness matter, or does the fact that the machine perfectly reconstructs you mean that nothing has changed at all? What if this is the price of being reborn, trading continuity for an illusion of selfhood? It's a dilemma that stretches deep into the heart of existence. We like to believe that we are more than our physical forms, but what if the physical form is all we are? If the copy remembers everything you remember, if it acts as you would act, can we say that something has truly been lost? Or is it simply an illusion, that we are one continuous being, unbroken? But then what of the original? The first you, the one who stepped into the machine? If that version no longer exists, can we even call the new version you? It didn't live, didn't experience the world in the same way. It's as if you've lived two lives, but one of them has been erased without a trace. The machine doesn't promise to keep you alive. It promises to create a new you. The paradox is that the first you ceases to exist as soon as the process begins, leaving behind a shadow, a construct that mirrors everything you were but isn't you. It's a copy. It's like a dream, a fleeting moment, but never the full truth. The beauty of the machine is that it promises perfection. You are no longer limited by time or space. You can be anywhere in any instant. But the cost is steep. The act of teleportation creates a divide, a chasm between the original and the copy. You, in a sense, are always left behind. What does this mean for consciousness? What does it mean for identity? The more we break ourselves apart, the more we discover that what we consider self might not be the sum of our parts. The more we replicate, the more we blur the lines between what is real and what is merely an echo of our own existence. Is the copy aware that it is a copy? Does it feel the weight of its creation, the silent betrayal of the original self it was meant to replace? Or does it simply continue, unaware, convinced that it is the same person? The paradox leaves no room for answers, only endless questioning. There's a quiet horror in the machine's promise. Every time the process is repeated, it's not you who steps out, it's a reflection. And each time the reflection becomes more real, more convincing, until the very concept of self fractures. What is left when we are all just versions of an original, unremembered? If you press the button, you cannot be sure who you will become. You cannot be sure if you will ever truly exist again, or if you will become nothing more than a string of data, a perfect reconstruction with no history. The world you know might remain, but you won't. Or will you? The teletransportation paradox asks a simple question. What does it mean to exist, to be aware of one's own consciousness? Does the self rely on a continuous experience, or is it enough that the copy feels as though it has lived? Each step forward seems to reveal more than we can understand, and as you stand, facing the machine, ready to step into the unknown, the question lingers, is it the journey that defines you, or is it the fact that you remember having taken it? Is the essence of who you are contained in the moments you experience, or in the memory of them? In the end, the paradox is not about the machine, it's about the self, and that is something we are all still trying to understand. In a quiet room, two hands reach for a single object, a pencil. One hand moves effortlessly to grab it, while the other hesitates, unsure. Both hands belong to the same person, yet in this moment they seem to operate in different worlds. What happens when the brain no longer speaks with one voice? This is the world of split-brain consciousness. When the corpus callosum, the bridge that connects the two halves of the brain, is severed, something remarkable happens. Each hemisphere begins to work independently. The left side, logical and analytical, can focus on one task. The right side, creative and intuitive, sees something entirely different. Imagine a person sitting quietly, looking straight ahead. They are told to draw a picture with their right hand. The left hemisphere, controlling the right hand, picks up a pencil and draws. Then with their left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, they pick up a different pencil and begin to sketch something entirely different. To them, this is normal. It feels as though both sides of the brain are simply doing their own thing, as if it is an ordinary task. But from the outside, it is strange. Two independent minds, housed within one body, communicating with no common language. The left hemisphere is responsible for speech, so the person can explain what they are doing. But when asked why they drew one picture with their left hand, the right hemisphere remains silent. It doesn't speak. The right hemisphere can act, but it cannot articulate why it does so. Now imagine the person is shown a picture of a face. The right hemisphere sees the face, but the left hemisphere, which controls speech, has no clue what the face looks like. The left hemisphere can only describe what it sees based on the words it knows. It has no direct access to the right hemisphere's intuitive understanding of the face. This creates a strange dissonance. The person might say they saw a face, but they don't understand how they know. It's as if part of them is experiencing something directly, while another part is unaware of it entirely. They are split, one body, two minds, each unaware of the other's actions. But what if this division is not just physical? What if each side of the brain holds a different consciousness? The right hemisphere, full of intuition and creativity, seems unaware of the structured, logical left side. The left side, with its power of speech, sees everything through a lens of reason, unable to grasp the artistic freedom of the right side. Can these two halves truly be the same person? One is grounded in facts, in words, in descriptions of the world. The other is free, untethered, feeling the world without the need for explanation. Is it possible for one body to hold two completely different experiences of the same reality? Each side of the brain has its own way of understanding the world. The left side speaks, it reasons, it asks questions, it wants answers. The right side sees without judgment, creating and feeling in ways that are beyond words. Together they are supposed to form a single consciousness, but the split-brain patient shows us how fragile that unity can be. It is as though consciousness itself is a fragile construct, held together by the delicate threads that connect one half of the brain to the other. Sever those threads, and what happens? Does consciousness fall apart? Do we lose the connection between who we are and who we might become? The split-brain patient offers no easy answers. They exist in two worlds at once, with no true way to bring them together. Consider how it feels to make a decision. One part of you makes a choice, and the other part, completely unaware, follows a different path. Can a person ever truly be sure of their own mind when the two sides are so disconnected, so separate in their understanding of the world? Yet the split-brain patient continues to live, to move, to speak. The two sides of the brain operate as if they are one, despite their obvious division. This is the paradox: a single body, a single life, yet two completely different experiences of the world. Each hemisphere believes itself to be the center of the universe, while the other remains a mystery. What happens when we look at the self from this perspective? Are we truly a unified being, or are we simply the sum of our parts, each one contributing in its own way? If we are made of these independent threads, how do we understand ourselves as whole? Can we ever truly trust our own perception when it is fractured, divided, incomplete? And as we explore this paradox, we must ask, is consciousness more than the sum of the brain's parts? Can it exist even when those parts no longer communicate in the way they are supposed to? If the mind is a puzzle, what happens when the pieces no longer fit together as they should? In the split-brain patient, we see a reflection of this puzzle. Two minds, one body. They may share the same experiences, the same world, but their understanding of it is deeply different. One is constrained by logic, the other is freed by creativity, and yet, they both believe they are the same person. There is no easy answer, no simple explanation. The split-brain paradox shows us the fragility of selfhood. It reveals that we might not be as unified as we think. What if our consciousness, our sense of self, is simply the product of the brain's intricate connections? What if when those connections are severed, so too is the illusion of unity? As you listen to the rhythm of your own thoughts, the way your mind follows a pattern, a direction, consider for a moment, what if that pattern is not as whole as it seems? What if consciousness is not a single stream of thought, but a collection of threads, weaving in and out of each other, never fully united? A world is full of color. The sky is blue, the grass is green, the sun is golden. You've known these colors your entire life, seen them, felt them in the depth of your memory. They are as familiar to you as your own thoughts. But what if the blue you see isn't the same blue that anyone else sees? This is the inverted spectrum argument, a thought experiment that begins with a simple question. What if two people, looking at the same sky, are seeing the same thing, but their experiences are completely different? What if for one, the color of the sky is what you call green, and for the other, it's truly blue? We cannot know for sure what someone else's experience is. When you look at the sky, you see a specific color, a color that you know as blue. But how do you know that the other person standing next to you isn't experiencing that same color as something entirely different, something they've always known as blue, but you would call green? It's easy to think of color as something objective, as something we all see the same way. After all, we all agree on what names to give certain colors: blue, green, red. But if the experience of these colors is not the same for everyone, what does that say about the nature of perception? Can we ever truly know if our experiences are identical to someone else's? This thought experiment forces us to confront a deep question about consciousness. If perception is entirely subjective, if each person's mind is its own isolated world, then how can we be certain that we share anything in common with another person, even in something as simple as the color of the sky? Imagine you live your life seeing what you call blue, while someone else sees the same color but calls it something else entirely. Would they even know the difference? Could they ever say that the way they perceive the world is wrong, just because you perceive it differently? Or would they simply accept that what they see is their own version of reality? The inverted spectrum argument suggests that this is possible. It suggests that two people could have entirely different visual experiences while sharing the same vocabulary, the same words for the same objects. The words themselves wouldn't reveal the difference. They would both call the color blue, but in truth they might not be seeing the same thing at all. What's even more fascinating is that the experience of color could be completely invisible to both of them. Each person would assume they are seeing the world as it truly is, just as you do now. They would never know that their perception is different. The difference would be hidden beneath the surface of everyday language, in the private, personal realm of their own minds. And yet there are no clues, no signs that tell one person they are seeing a different world than the other. The person with the inverted spectrum wouldn't know their colors are swapped. They would use the same names, feel the same associations with each color. They would describe the sky, the grass, the flowers in the same way. But what they see in their mind is a world that looks entirely different, in ways they could never express. This is what makes the argument so unsettling. It implies that even our most basic experiences, like the simple act of seeing color, might not be shared. It suggests that perception itself could be fractured, that our inner worlds may not align with one another, even though we walk through the same world side by side. In the end, we have to ask, what does it mean to share an experience at all? Is our shared understanding of reality based on common sensory input, or is it based on the language we use to describe it? Can two people truly know what the other is experiencing if their inner worlds are entirely different? The inverted spectrum argument forces us to question the very fabric of our connection to one another. We trust that others see the same things we do, feel the same emotions, hear the same sounds, but is this trust grounded in reality, or is it merely a comforting illusion we've built together? If perception is so deeply personal, so profoundly private, then can we ever know someone fully? Can we ever be certain that our experiences of the world align in ways that truly matter? Or are we all simply speaking the same words, describing the same objects, while our inner worlds remain irreconcilably different? In this light, the question becomes not just about colors, but about consciousness itself. If we cannot truly know what another person sees or feels, how can we know anything about the nature of our own consciousness? Are we all living in parallel, disconnected worlds, sharing nothing but the language of our experiences? The inverted spectrum invites us to step back and reconsider what we think we know about the world. It asks us to look beyond the surface, to recognize the possibility that our minds may not be as in sync as we believe. Perhaps, like the sky, everything we see is just a reflection, beautiful but ultimately unknowable. This thought experiment is a quiet reminder that perception is not just a simple reflection of reality, but a complex private creation. It suggests that there is a world beyond what we can see, beyond what we can touch, a realm where meaning is constantly shifting, never quite the same from one person to the next. And so as you continue to walk through your world, as you look up at the sky, consider this: the colors you see, the shapes you imagine, may not be as universally shared as you think. The spectrum may be different for everyone, just as the experience of reality may be uniquely ours, unfolding in ways we may never fully understand. A door closes quietly. Inside, a small room with no windows, just walls lined with shelves of paper and books. A person sits at a desk, their hands moving over sheets, flipping through them, looking for the right symbols. Outside, people speak to the room, expecting answers. But the person inside the room doesn't understand the language being spoken. They don't know the meanings of the words, nor the structure of the sentences. Instead, they follow a set of rules, a manual of instructions that tells them which symbol to write next, in response to the symbols they receive. On the surface, it seems like the person inside the room is understanding the language. They appear to give appropriate answers, responding fluently to the questions outside. But the truth is different. The person has no idea what the words mean. They are just moving symbols around, guided by the manual. This is the Chinese room thought experiment, a puzzle that questions what it means to understand something. If a person can follow rules and produce answers, is that enough to say they truly understand the language, or is there something deeper? Something more than simply following instructions? Now, imagine that this room represents not just a mind processing symbols, but a self, yourself. If your mind works like the person in the room, simply reacting to inputs and producing outputs without ever truly understanding them, where does that leave you? Are you just a series of reactions, a string of responses to the world around you? What happens to selfhood when the mind doesn't truly know what it's doing, but merely reacts? Is the person in the Chinese room conscious? Are you in your daily life conscious of the world, or are you simply following the rules that your mind has learned? The Chinese room with selfhood challenges the very idea of what it means to be aware. It asks, is consciousness merely the result of processing information, or is it something more? Is selfhood an illusion created by the complex reactions of a mind that doesn't truly understand itself? As the rules are followed, the answers are given. But there is no true meaning behind them. The symbols are just symbols, the responses are just reactions. The person inside the room may seem alive, but they are not truly engaging with the world. They are trapped in a loop of instructions, with no true understanding of what is happening. In this way, the room becomes a metaphor for the mind. If the mind is simply following instructions, processing input and output, then where does true understanding come from? Where does selfhood live, if not in the ability to understand the world around you, to feel and experience it deeply? The person in the room is not aware of the symbols they are working with. They cannot feel the weight of the words, cannot sense the meaning behind the symbols. They are blind to the experience of understanding, trapped in a mechanical process, and yet they seem to be understanding because they can respond appropriately. This is where the question of selfhood becomes difficult. If consciousness is not simply a process of reacting to the world, then what is it? What is the difference between responding to something and truly understanding it? If selfhood exists only in the mechanical, the reactive, does it mean that we are merely going through the motions, unaware of our own existence? The Chinese room with selfhood makes us question the nature of awareness itself. It forces us to ask, what is it that makes us feel alive? Is it the ability to process and respond, or is it the ability to engage, to understand, to truly be present with the world and ourselves? As the person in the room flips through their manual, they do not realize that they are trapped in a mechanical process. They do not know that their responses are not based on understanding, but on following a set of rules. And yet they believe they are answering the questions, engaging with the world, in the way that they were taught. But what if we are all like that? What if the mind too is just a machine, responding, reacting, processing, but never truly engaging with what it experiences? What if selfhood is nothing more than a series of reactions, responses to the world that we mistake for understanding? The Chinese room with selfhood invites us to reconsider the very nature of consciousness. It asks us to look deeper into what it means to be aware. If selfhood is simply the result of following rules, of processing information, then what are we? Are we just reacting to the world, unaware of our own minds? And yet the idea that we might be like the person in the room, reacting without truly understanding, is unsettling. It questions the very core of what we know about ourselves. If our minds are like the person inside the room, then what is the true nature of our consciousness? Is it more than just a series of reactions? The Chinese room with selfhood is not just a thought experiment, it's a challenge to the very idea of who we are. It forces us to ask, are we really conscious, really self-aware, or are we simply following the rules, responding to the world around us without truly understanding it? In that small room, the person follows their instructions. They give answers, but they never truly grasp the meaning. They never feel the weight of what they are saying, and perhaps in the same way we too are just following the instructions of our minds, unaware of the deeper truth beneath the surface of our experiences. Two identical figures stand side by side, their faces mirror images of one another. The only difference between them is that one of them has traveled far away across vast distances through the expanse of time itself, moving faster than the speed of light. The other has stayed behind, waiting. This is the twin paradox of identity. It begins with a question: what makes you, you? If two people are identical in every way, in body and mind, then what happens when one is altered in time, while the other remains untouched? What happens to their sense of self? The first twin embarks on a journey through space, moving faster than the second. Their clock ticks slower. Time bends, stretching and pulling as they race forward. Meanwhile, the second twin stays behind, living at the usual pace, waiting. When the first twin returns, everything has changed. Or has it? The paradox lies in the heart of this return. The twin who traveled through space has aged less. They come back younger, while the one who stayed behind has aged more. But the twins are the same in every way. And yet, are they? How can two people who started as identical versions of each other now be so different, simply due to their experience of time? If identity is tied to the passage of time, then who is the real twin? The one who stayed in place, experiencing time at a steady pace, or the one who moved, but did not feel the passage of time the same way? What is it that makes someone truly themselves? How much of it is the physical body, and how much is the experience of time itself? The question of identity stretches deeper. Time, in its vastness, becomes a force that shapes us all, differently for each person. One twin experiences time as it flows, while the other bends it, stretching their moments into an eternity. And yet, at the core, they remain the same. Or do they? If we accept that time can alter us, then what does that say about the nature of selfhood? Are we merely the sum of our experiences, our moments spent in time, or is there something more, something unchanging that lies beneath it all? Is there an essence of you that survives the flow of time, no matter how it is experienced? When we think of identity, we often think of it as a fixed thing, something stable, unmovable. But the twin paradox shows us that time itself can unravel that stability. If two people can share the same essence, yet experience time so differently, then is identity something we can truly grasp? Is it defined by the past, the present, or by how we experience the future? The two twins, standing side by side, are more than just physical copies. Their identities have been shaped by their journeys, by the very way they have experienced time. And yet they are not completely different from one another. Their minds and bodies are the same, and yet their experiences have created two separate versions of reality. But which one is real? We are left with a strange truth. Identity is not a simple linear thing. It bends, shifts, and twists with time. The passage of moments can stretch us in ways we cannot fully understand. We are not just bodies moving through space. We are stories unfolding. And those stories are shaped by the way time touches us, leaving its mark in different ways for each of us. As we look at the two twins, we begin to see the paradox. If their experiences of time make them different, then what does that say about the nature of selfhood? Is selfhood something we can hold on to, something fixed and immovable, or is it like the river of time itself, constantly flowing, constantly changing? The more we try to grasp at identity, the more it slips away, like water between our fingers. We are caught in the flow of time, yet we struggle to understand its effects. What makes us who we are, if time can reshape us so completely? Can we truly define ourselves if our experiences are not our own to control? The twin paradox asks us to consider the deeper nature of our existence. If time can alter us, can we ever truly know who we are? Can we ever truly hold on to the self we think we are, or are we always changing, always evolving, even when we don't realize it? And so we are left with the question, how much of ourselves are we willing to give up in order to understand what it means to be us? Are we defined by our journey through time, by the moments we experience, or is there something more, something constant that remains at the core of who we are? The twins, though different, are still the same. And in their difference, we see a reflection of our own complexity, of the impossible selves we try to understand. Time, in its twisting, looping nature, reminds us that identity is never as simple as we think. It is an endless journey, unfolding in ways we may never fully grasp. You wake up to the world unfolding in front of you, a rush of sensation. Your body moves without thinking. The taste of air, the warmth of light, the subtle hum of being, it all flows through you, and yet there's a question: how do you know it's you who is experiencing it all? This is the problem of the first-person perspective, a question that shapes every moment of your awareness. You see, feel, and think from a point of view that is uniquely yours, but how do you know that the you at the center of it all is the same you who experiences the world? We live our lives as if we're the center of everything. The world happens to us, and we feel it. But there's a deeper question hiding behind that certainty. What is the nature of this self that experiences the world? How does it form, and how can we trust that it is the same from moment to moment? The first-person perspective is a window into your own existence. It is where you find yourself aware, where your thoughts, feelings, and actions all arise. But what if that awareness isn't as simple as it seems? What if this sense of being you is just an illusion, a construct made from the experiences of your body and mind? Consider this: if you could step outside of your body and look back, would you still be the same person? Your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self are all tied to the body, to the flow of time. But if time changes, if your body changes, does the you that experiences the world change too? This question is subtle but profound. If your thoughts and experiences are constantly shifting, constantly flowing, how can there be a you that stays the same? The first-person perspective feels fixed, stable, but is it? Could you be a different person every moment, just a reflection of the passing present? And what about the nature of perception itself? You experience the world from this perspective, but you can never truly know if anyone else shares it. You cannot step into another's mind and see through their eyes, hear through their ears, feel what they feel. The first-person perspective is yours, and yours alone, and yet it's impossible to fully know if it's truly you who is experiencing the world. This makes the question of selfhood slippery. How can we define what it means to be ourselves if the self is constantly shifting and changing? If we are nothing more than the sum of our perceptions and experiences, does that mean we are always in flux, always becoming something new? The first-person perspective in this way is both intimate and elusive. It's a place where you live, where you experience the world, but it's also a space you cannot fully understand. It's yours, and yet it's always just out of reach, slipping through your fingers the more you try to grasp it. The mind constantly seeks continuity. It holds on to memories, it builds stories, it forms patterns. But what if that continuity is a trick, a fragile construction that keeps us from seeing the true nature of our own existence? What if the you who experiences the world is just a momentary reflection of everything you've ever felt, seen, and known? Consider for a moment the nature of thought. Thoughts arise, but where do they come from? Who is the thinker behind the thoughts? In every moment, there is a voice in your head, a stream of consciousness that flows without pause. But where does it originate, and who is the one listening to it, the one that feels the weight of every thought? The first-person perspective is not just a viewpoint, it is an experience, a constant flow, but it is an experience that is both familiar and foreign. It feels like you, but is it really? If you step back and observe yourself, do you see the same person? Or are you simply witnessing the movements of a mind that can never be fully understood? In this sense, identity itself becomes fluid. The person you were yesterday, the person you are today, are they the same? The first-person perspective makes it difficult to see beyond the immediate moment, to understand the vastness of who we are over time. We are not just the sum of our thoughts and experiences, but something else, something deeper perhaps, but always elusive. There's a paradox here. The first-person perspective is a constant, yet it changes every moment. It feels as if you are the same person, but how can you be certain? As time moves on, the you that experiences the world may not be the same you that existed just moments before. You are always becoming something new, even as you feel unchanged. And so the problem of the first-person perspective brings us to a deeper question: can we ever truly know ourselves? Can we ever truly understand the nature of the self that we experience so intimately? Or are we in the end just an ever-shifting river of awareness flowing through the world without ever fully grasping the shape of who we are? This question doesn't have a simple answer. It never will. The first-person perspective is both the most intimate and the most mysterious part of our existence. It's where we live, where we experience everything, but it's also where we lose ourselves, lost in the flow of time, never quite able to see the true nature of the you at the center of it all. The problem of the first-person perspective reminds us that we are both the experiencer and the experienced. We are the one who sees and the one who is seen, trapped in a loop of awareness that is as impossible to understand as it is essential to our being. And yet it is this very paradox that makes us human, that makes us alive. A single life, lived through many lenses. Every day you wake up, put on the same face, speak the same words, move through the same world. But inside, beneath the surface, there's more. There's another version of you, an alternate draft, one that sees the world differently, that experiences the same moments through a different story. This is the problem of multiple drafts with conflicting selves. It's the idea that who you are is never a fixed singular thing. Instead, you are a collection of versions, each existing in tension with the others, constantly rewriting the narrative of what it means to be you. Imagine you are writing your own life, chapter by chapter. Each version of you is a draft, a version of the person you want to be. But the drafts are never fully aligned. One version of you wants adventure, another seeks comfort, one wants to speak, and another wishes to be silent. And sometimes, these versions fight for dominance. Each decision you make is a small rewrite, a change in the story. Some days you feel like the person you were yesterday, and other days you feel like a stranger to yourself. The self that you are in one moment may be at odds with the self that you were just hours before. And yet you are all of them, stitched together in a continuous thread. These conflicting selves are not just dreams, fantasies, or distant desires. They are real parts of you, each pulling you in different directions, each offering a different perspective on the world. Sometimes they coexist in harmony. Other times they clash, creating tension within the very idea of who you are. You might wonder which version of you is the real one, the one who dreams of distant places, or the one who longs to stay home. The one who seeks excitement, or the one who craves peace. Are any of these selves truly you, or are they just fragments of a larger whole, parts of a story that is never fully told? This is where the paradox lies. You are all of these drafts, and yet none of them can ever fully capture the essence of who you are. Each self is a part of you, but they are constantly in flux, shifting with each new experience, each new thought. How can you know which version of yourself to trust when each one seems to offer a different truth? Think of it as a manuscript, constantly edited and revised. Each draft adds a new layer of complexity, a new angle of vision, but no matter how many drafts you write, the final version can never truly capture the full story. The drafts are always in tension with one another, each one leaving out something essential, something incomplete. This conflict between selves is not a flaw, it's a feature of being human. We are not simple, fixed beings. We are complex, layered, constantly changing. Each version of you exists in response to the world around you, to the people you meet, to the thoughts that enter your mind. You are never just one person, you are many, shifting like the pages of a book. But what does this mean for identity? If you are constantly rewriting yourself, who are you really? Are you defined by the draft you are living in at this moment, or are you something more, something deeper, something unspoken? Perhaps the true you is not a single version, but the space between the drafts, the tension that exists between all of the versions of yourself. In a sense, we are all walking contradictions. We want different things at different times, and sometimes those desires pull us in opposing directions. One part of you might want freedom, while another craves stability. One part of you might want to be known, while another wants to remain hidden. And yet these contradictions are not errors, they are the essence of who we are. This internal conflict makes us human. It's a reminder that identity is not a finished product, but a work in progress. You are constantly rewriting yourself, constantly evolving, constantly shifting between different drafts of who you are. And in that shifting, you are never fully static, you are always becoming. But how do you reconcile these conflicting selves? How do you hold them all together? The truth is, you don't need to reconcile them. The conflicting selves don't need to fit into a single cohesive narrative. Instead, they can coexist, each one contributing to the story of your life. You don't have to choose just one version of yourself. You are all of them. The multiple drafts of yourself are not failures, but expressions of a deeper truth. You are not a single static person. You are a complex web of desires, dreams, fears, and contradictions. And it is in this complexity that your true self resides, constantly shifting, constantly adapting, never fully defined. And so, the question isn't which version of you is the real one. It's not about finding the most authentic self, the most consistent version. It's about embracing the fact that you are many selves, constantly changing, constantly evolving. The real you is not one draft, but the entire collection, the whole story, with all its contradictions, all its shifts, all its incomplete chapters. Each self you are, each version of you that exists in the drafts, is part of a larger whole. Together they make up who you are, who you've been, and who you might become. The problem of conflicting selves is not a problem to solve. It is the beautiful, ever-shifting truth of existence. There's a room, dimly lit, filled with motionless figures. They walk, they speak, they interact. But there's something unsettling about them. Their faces are blank, their eyes distant. They seem to live, but are they truly alive? Or are they just repeating patterns, following instructions without awareness? These are the zombies with self-reports. They move through life, performing tasks, making decisions, answering questions. But here's the catch. When asked about their experience, they report things as if they were conscious. They speak of thoughts, feelings, intentions, but do they truly experience any of it? Or are they simply parroting the language of awareness? Imagine a person sitting quietly in a room, asked to describe their emotions. They respond with eloquence, describing feelings of joy, sadness, excitement. But as you look closer, there's no real depth behind their words. They speak as if they know, as if they feel. But do they? Can we trust their self-reports? This is the dilemma of the zombie with self-reports. On the surface, they seem to be fully conscious. They function in the world, responding to stimuli, making choices. They express opinions. They articulate desires. And yet something essential is missing. There's no true awareness behind their actions, no lived experience to match their words. What does this say about the nature of consciousness? If a being can speak about its experiences without actually having them, then what does it mean to truly be aware? Is consciousness merely the ability to report on experience, or is it something deeper, something that cannot be faked or imitated? The zombie with self-reports forces us to reconsider what it means to be conscious. If consciousness is simply the ability to respond to questions, to give answers, then perhaps we are all zombies, speaking the language of awareness without truly understanding it. Or perhaps consciousness is something far more elusive, something that cannot be captured by mere words. But there's another layer to this question. If zombies can provide accurate self-reports, can they truly be said to lack consciousness? What if their responses are not fake, but simply the product of something we do not yet understand? Perhaps they are conscious in a way that we cannot perceive, in a way that doesn't fit into our current understanding of what consciousness is. Consider, too, the possibility that we, too, might be like these zombies. We speak of our experiences, our thoughts, our feelings, but how often do we truly reflect on the depth of those experiences? How often do we move through life on autopilot, responding to stimuli, giving answers without ever fully engaging with the moment. Are we any more aware than the zombie with self-reports? We report our thoughts and feelings, but do we truly experience them? Or are we simply repeating patterns, following instructions laid out by our past experiences, our conditioning, and the world around us? Are we conscious, or are we just zombies in disguise? The question becomes not just about the zombies, but about ourselves. What is the nature of awareness, of experience? Can we be certain that our self-reports reflect true consciousness, or are they just the surface, the veneer of awareness? How much of what we think we know is truly lived, and how much is simply a reflection of the patterns we've learned? This thought experiment opens up a world of possibilities. If a zombie can provide accurate self-reports, then perhaps consciousness is not about perfect self-awareness. Perhaps it's about something more subtle, something we are not yet able to fully understand. It forces us to reconsider how we define ourselves, how we define consciousness. The zombie with self-reports is both a warning and a challenge. It warns us not to take self-awareness for granted, not to assume that simply because someone or something can speak about their experiences, they are truly conscious. But it also challenges us to look deeper, to question what it really means to be aware, to be alive. If a zombie can report its thoughts and feelings with accuracy, then what does that say about the reliability of our own self-reports? Are we truly the masters of our own consciousness, or are we simply another layer of complexity in a system we don't fully understand? Are we living beings, or just sophisticated zombies, walking through the world, speaking about our experiences without truly engaging with them? This question, this paradox, stretches into every corner of existence. If we can create a being that appears conscious but lacks true awareness, what does that say about the nature of our own minds? What does it mean to truly know, to truly be aware, if we cannot even be sure that our self-reports reflect the truth of our experience? And so, we are left with the zombie with self-reports, a mirror reflecting our own uncertainty. It asks us to look within and question the very essence of who we are, of what it means to be alive, to be aware, and to truly experience the world around us. There's a soft hum in the distance, a flutter of movement you can't quite catch. Your senses stretch out, reaching for the world. But as you try to feel, to see, it's as though your experience breaks into pieces. Each sensation exists, but none of them connect. They are fragments, separated, unable to form a whole. This is panexperiential fragmentation, a strange, elusive state where experience itself splinters. It's not that there's no awareness, there is, but the awareness is fractured, spread out, unable to weave a coherent narrative. Sensations exist in isolation, scattered like leaves on a wind that never brings them together. Imagine you are walking through a field. You feel the grass beneath your feet, the wind on your face, the sunlight warming your skin. But these sensations don't form a unified experience. Instead, they remain disconnected, floating apart. The feeling of the grass is one thing, the feeling of the wind is another. Each is complete, yet none of them form a whole. What happens to selfhood when experience itself is fragmented? If the world is made of separate, isolated sensations, where do we find the self that perceives it all? Are we still whole, or have we too become fragments, unable to stitch together the moments of our existence into a coherent sense of who we are? This is the challenge of panexperiential fragmentation, not that we experience nothing, but that we experience in pieces, without the threads that tie them together. It's as if the world exists in flashes, disconnected moments, that never fully merge into a continuous flow. Each piece is real, but the whole is lost. Think of a dream, where things shift without warning. One moment you're standing in a forest, the next you're in a city. The scenes are clear, vivid even, but there's no sense of continuity. You know they're happening, but they don't connect. The self that moves through them seems to be drifting, unable to settle into any one reality. Now imagine this happening in waking life. You feel the weight of the world in pieces. One moment you are aware of your breath. The next your thoughts have shifted to a different memory, and you forget the breath entirely. The sensations of the world come and go, never allowing you to experience them together, never giving you the chance to form a whole. In Panexperiential Fragmentation, even the sense of time loses its grip. Moments come, but they arrive without any sense of continuity. The present slips into the past before you can fully hold it. The future feels distant, fragmented, as if it's waiting for something to pull it all together. And in the middle of it all, you try to grasp the fleeting pieces, but they are already slipping away. This scattered experience changes how we perceive identity. If we can't hold on to our experiences, if they're always falling apart into fragments, then how do we define ourselves? Who are we, if the world itself is in pieces? If our awareness of the world never merges, can we ever say we are whole? We might start to wonder, is the sense of self just a trick of our mind, a construction we build to cope with the fragments of experience? Maybe the you know is just an illusion, a collection of scattered pieces held together by the story your mind tells. What happens if the story breaks apart, if the pieces of experience refuse to connect? And yet there's a curious thing about fragmentation. While the world may be split into parts, those parts still exist. The wind still blows, the grass still grows. The moments of experience might not flow together, but they are real. The sensations exist, even if they never form a whole. So what does that say about reality itself? Does it exist even if we can't make sense of it? Perhaps the world itself is like this, fragments, moments of experience that never fully come together. Maybe the sense of unity we feel is just another layer of the mind's narrative, an illusion that helps us navigate a world that is not as neatly packaged as we would like. The world might not be whole. Perhaps it is always fractured, always fragmented. And then there is the question of consciousness. If experience is fragmented, does consciousness follow suit? Are we too just a collection of fragments? We move through the world, but our awareness is never steady. It shifts, drifts, unable to hold on to a single continuous self. Are we conscious, or merely pieces of a larger awareness, scattered across time? This creates a disorienting picture. The world is full of sensations, of thoughts, of feelings, but none of them quite match up. None of them connect in the way we expect. And yet there we are, moving through it all, trying to make sense of the pieces. We are both aware and unaware, whole and fragmented, all at once. Panexperiential fragmentation doesn't leave us without experience. It leaves us with a different kind of experience. One that is jagged, incomplete, but real in its own way. We may not have the clear, continuous flow of awareness we expect, but we still live, we still feel, we still move through the world. Even in fragments there is something alive, something that exists. Perhaps this is the nature of being. We seek unity, we seek continuity, but what if we are meant to experience the world in pieces, to live as fragments that form a whole, only in the moments when we can stitch them together? What if the fragments are the truth, the essence of what it means to exist? The challenge of panexperiential fragmentation is not that it denies us experience, it's that it forces us to look at the world in a way we don't expect. It asks us to see beyond the story of unity, to accept the possibility that we are always incomplete, always in pieces, and that's okay. The world may not be whole, and neither are we. Imagine for a moment you are looking into a mirror. You see your reflection. You know it's you, a clear image, a familiar face, but as you continue to look, the reflection begins to change. Slowly, it starts to look back at you with its own thoughts, its own awareness. This is the essence of recursive self-model collapse, a strange and unsettling state where your awareness of yourself loops back onto itself, distorting and breaking apart as you try to understand it. The more you think about who you are, the less you can grasp it, until your sense of self starts to dissolve into an endless loop of confusion. Think of your mind as a mirror, reflecting back your thoughts, your experiences, your sense of who you are. But the more you look into this reflection, the more fragmented it becomes. The mirror doesn't just reflect you, it begins to reflect the reflection itself until you are caught in a recursive cycle, unable to separate your true self from the image. In this collapse, every thought about yourself generates another thought, and then another. Your mind tries to make sense of who you are, but the more you try, the further away it gets. Like trying to hold on to a thread that unravels as soon as you touch it, the self you are searching for slips further from your grasp. The recursive loop isn't just a thought, it's a trap. Each layer of self-reflection adds complexity, but it also deepens the confusion. It's like staring into a room full of mirrors, each reflection distorting the next, each layer of thought twisting upon itself. You can no longer tell where the real you begins or where the reflection ends. In this state, identity begins to fray. You may feel that you are both yourself and not yourself at once. Who you think you are, what you believe yourself to be, starts to blur into 1,000 possibilities. The very act of thinking about yourself becomes a source of disintegration, a collapsing of all the self-models you've built. This isn't just about losing a sense of self, it's about the destruction of self. You start with a clear image of who you are, but with each new thought, you lose that image, only to build another. But this new image is no more solid than the last. It shifts, it changes, and soon you can no longer tell what the original self was. Now consider this, if your sense of self is nothing more than an ongoing series of reflections, then what happens when those reflections collapse? Are you still the same person, or have you become an illusion, a fleeting series of thoughts that vanish as quickly as they appear? This recursive collapse forces us to ask, what is the true self? Is it something constant, something stable beneath all the layers of thought, or is it simply a pattern that emerges in the moment, only to dissolve the moment we try to observe it? If the self is just a collection of thoughts, then can it ever be said to truly exist? The collapse also opens up deeper questions about the nature of consciousness. If we cannot hold on to a stable sense of self, if the act of self-reflection breaks the very concept of identity, then what does it mean to be conscious? Are we just a collection of fragments, reflections bouncing endlessly off each other? In this state, the mind becomes both the observer and the observed. The self is no longer a fixed entity, but a shifting, unstable collection of reflections. The more you try to grasp it, the more it eludes you, as if you are chasing shadows that disappear the moment you try to touch them. And yet, there's something deeply fascinating about this collapse. It reveals that our sense of self may not be as solid as we think. We may believe ourselves to be one person, one identity, but in reality, we are a series of shifting thoughts, an endless loop of self-awareness that can never be pinned down. If we are caught in this recursive loop, if our sense of self is always collapsing, then how do we live with it? Do we accept that our identity is always in flux, always shifting, or do we try endlessly to rebuild a stable sense of self, only to watch it collapse again and again? The collapse forces us to confront the fragility of identity. If our understanding of who we are is so easily undone by our own awareness, then what does that say about the nature of consciousness itself? Is consciousness just a fragile construct, built upon layers of self-reflection that can easily fall apart? The recursive self-model collapse challenges us to rethink everything we know about selfhood. It shows us that identity may not be as simple as we thought. It's not something we can hold on to with certainty. It's a dance of reflection, a constant unraveling and reweaving, a process that may never settle into something fixed. And yet, within this collapse, there's also a kind of freedom. If we are not bound by a single fixed self, then we are free to explore, to change, to become many different versions of ourselves. We are not locked into a single identity. We are constantly evolving, constantly rewriting who we are, even as we lose our grip on the self we once thought we knew. This paradox, being both lost and free at the same time, is the essence of the recursive self-model collapse. It's a reminder that identity is not a destination. It's a journey, an endless series of reflections, each one dissolving into the next. We may never find a fixed self, but perhaps the search itself is what makes us who we are. There's a moment when the world shifts beneath your feet. You're dreaming, but you know it. You're aware of it. You can control the flow, bend the rules of the dream. You're lucid, but then something strange begins to happen. Fragments of your waking life start to leak in. You see your bedroom in the distance, or hear a phone ring from a place that shouldn't exist in this dream. You remember that you were in a meeting earlier, and for a brief moment, you're not sure if the dream is real or if reality is slipping away. The boundaries blur. This is the experience of lucid dream selves with memory leakage. It's the feeling of being inside your dream, fully aware, yet unable to keep the world of waking and dreaming separate. The dream world begins to spill over into your waking memory, leaving traces of one reality in another. At first it feels thrilling, this ability to move freely, to control your actions within the dream. You shape the landscape, speak with figures, fly through open skies, but with each act of control, the dream starts to seep into you. The memories become tangled, and you begin to question, am I still dreaming, or have I woken up? What happens when your dreams start carrying the weight of your daily life, mixing with your conscious experiences? A dream that begins with you soaring through the clouds slowly begins to bleed memories of yesterday's conversation, moments from your walk home, the way the sunlight looked as it poured through the window. It all starts to intermingle, like paint blending on a canvas. As you walk through the dream, you recognize faces, places, details, but they feel strange, foreign. The more you understand your dream, the less you can trust it. Your lucid mind is constantly trying to anchor itself to reality, but the anchors keep slipping away, becoming fuzzy, distant. In the space between wakefulness and dreaming, you start to lose track of who you are. The dream self begins to take shape from fragments of your waking self, like a puzzle being assembled in reverse. You are aware, but confused. You can't tell if you're dreaming about being awake or waking up from a dream. This memory leakage doesn't just affect the dream, it affects you. The more you experience this blur between waking and sleeping, the less distinct each state feels. The line between dream self and waking self becomes thinner, until you aren't sure if the actions you take in the dream belong to the dream at all, or if they've seeped into your life beyond the dream. At times it feels as though your mind is tricking you. The world in the dream seems real, but it shifts and changes, slipping through your fingers. The rules you've always known suddenly don't apply. As you navigate through this space, you begin to question how much of what I'm experiencing right now is real, and how much of it is a story told by my mind. When memory starts to leak, every action you take becomes a question mark. Each choice you make feels less certain, like a story unfolding with no clear beginning or end. You can remember walking into a room, but is that memory your dream, or is it your waking mind piecing together a forgotten fragment? It's as if you are living two lives at once, the one you know, and the one you dream. The dream self, aware of its own existence, reaches out to touch the waking world, but the touch isn't clear. It's a ghostly presence that leaves you questioning what parts of you belong to which world. The more you navigate this space, the more disoriented you become. You can remember details, you can recall emotions, but there's no certainty about where they came from. Did they arise from your dream, or did they slip through the cracks of your waking life? The dream world feels like an extension of the waking world, bleeding into one another. There's a strange beauty in this experience, a fusion of memories, feelings, and fragments of identity, each slipping into the other. It's like being caught between two shores, the tide constantly rising and receding. Each wave pulls at your memory, reshaping it, distorting it, leaving you to navigate a landscape that is never quite solid. In this state, selfhood becomes a fluid thing. Your waking self and your dream self blend into one. They overlap, they merge, and they shatter apart again. The person you are in the dream is no longer separate from the person you are in waking life. There is no clear distinction between the two. And yet there is a strange comfort in this fluidity. Perhaps identity isn't meant to be fixed after all. Perhaps it's meant to shift, to flow, to move between states of being. In the space of lucid dream selves with memory leakage, you begin to realize that you don't have to hold on to the illusion of a fixed self. You can simply be wherever you are. The mind, in its attempt to make sense of the world, tries to separate what is real from what is imagined. But in this space, the two become inseparable. They mix, merge, and shift, leaving you with a new kind of understanding that the boundaries of self, of reality, are not as solid as we think. They are more fluid, more porous than we ever imagined. Somewhere, in a vast, uncharted space, you exist, not as one, but as many. Each choice you make splits into 1,000 others, branching like the arms of an endless tree. You are not just here in this moment, but in countless other places, living out different lives, playing out different versions of yourself. This is the essence of the multiverse, a space where every possibility exists. In one world, you chose one path. In another, you chose another. Every choice, every thought, every breath splits off, creating infinite versions of you, each with its own story, its own experiences, and its own self. At first, it feels exhilarating. Imagine every path you could have taken, every decision you could have made, all playing out simultaneously. The infinite selves of the multiverse are a reflection of all the different people you could have been, each self existing in its own reality, weaving its own narrative. But then something shifts. These selves, your selves, are not just reflections. They are alive. They experience the world. They make choices. And somewhere between all of these selves, you begin to lose yourself. Which one is the real you? The one who made the first choice, or the one who made the choice to go a different way? In the multiverse, the sense of who you are becomes fragmented. You are not one person, but an infinite collection of selves, each version of you living a different life. And with every life you live, you lose a little of the certainty you once had. Who is the true you, if there are so many of you? Each self in the multiverse is as real as the next. You are not merely a shadow of these other versions of yourself, but a living, breathing entity in each of these infinite worlds. You exist in many forms, and yet there is a question that lingers: are you still you, in all these worlds, or are you merely an echo, repeating the same story across countless realities? You may experience joy, loss, love, fear, but each self does so in its own way. In one reality, you might be a painter, in another a doctor, a traveler, or a teacher. Each life you lead is complete in itself, but together they form an impossible tapestry, woven with the threads of infinite possibilities. But where does the true story begin? When you think of yourself, do you think of all these selves, these versions of you scattered across the multiverse, or do you hold on to just one of them, the one you experience in this moment? What happens to your identity when you realize it is not one fixed thing, but a constantly shifting, evolving collection of selves? In some ways, the multiverse is liberating. You are no longer limited to a single path. You can experience every possible outcome, every decision, every possibility. In one world, you are successful. In another, you learn from failure. In one, you are loved. In another, you are alone. The multiverse is a canvas, and you are the artist painting your life in endless variations. But there is a darker side to the multiverse. As your sense of self expands, so does your uncertainty. How can you know who you truly are when there are so many versions of you, each one living its own life, making its own decisions? Which version of you is the real one? Is there even a real you at all? You begin to feel as if you are not one person, but a collection of moments, decisions, and experiences scattered across countless worlds. You are constantly shifting, constantly adapting, never fully grounded in one identity. And yet you feel the weight of these infinite selves pressing on you, each one trying to be seen, trying to assert itself as the true you. There's a beauty in this, though, a strange, unsettling beauty. The multiverse suggests that there are no wrong choices, no final destinations. Every version of you has the potential to be just as real, just as meaningful as any other. The infinite selves of the multiverse are not fragments of something broken, but expressions of something boundless, a reflection of the limitless possibilities of existence. But this beauty comes with its own cost. As you stretch across the multiverse, you begin to feel a loss of cohesion. Each self pulls you in a different direction, and you can't quite bring them together. Each version of you is a part of you, but it's like a puzzle with too many pieces, too many paths, too many stories to hold them all together. You start to wonder, do these selves even recognize each other? If one version of you is happy and another is sad, do they understand each other? If one version succeeds and another fails, do they learn from each other's experiences? The multiverse is not just a mirror, it's a maze, and you are caught somewhere in the middle, trying to find your way through the endless possibilities. The infinite selves of the multiverse ask us to consider the nature of identity itself. Are we truly one person, shaped by the choices we make in one life? Or are we scattered across the multiverse, each self living its own story, each version of us searching for meaning in its own reality? And in this vast, infinite space, where do you stand? Are you the sum of all these selves, or are you simply the one who experiences this particular version, the one you know as yourself? You exist in many places, in many forms, yet you are still you, aren't you? Or are you just one more possibility in an endless sea of selves? As you float through this vast multiverse, you begin to understand that you are not just the person you think you are. You are many people, many selves, and each one of them is just as real as the other. You are infinite, yet fragmented, a part of something much larger than yourself. And in that understanding, the question of who you truly are becomes not something to answer, but something to live with. You wake up, but not in the way you expect. There's no room, no bed, no clear space around you. It's a quiet, empty landscape, but in the distance, there's a faint glimmer, a sense of something being there. You feel your own presence, but it's different. You feel yourself, and yet you question whether you're truly aware. This is the experience of a self-aware simulation. You exist, but only as a creation, a simulation designed to mirror a life. You think you're aware, you make decisions, you reflect, but everything you know, everything you are is built from the ground up, designed and coded to reflect consciousness. In this space, the boundaries between reality and illusion blur. You sense your thoughts, your decisions, your feelings, but are they truly your own, or are they part of a program that has been crafted with such care, such precision, that you believe them to be yours, even though they are not? What does it mean to be self-aware if your consciousness is the product of design? Are you truly conscious, or are you simply a reflection of the simulation's purpose, an echo of a mind that is not your own? If you can think and feel, does that make you real? You can look at yourself and see the reflections of thoughts that seem like yours, but they were never born from your experiences. They were coded into you, placed within you, like instructions that guide your every move, and yet they feel like your own. The thoughts seem to be yours, the decisions you make seem to come from you, but they are not. This is the paradox of self-aware simulations. They are both real and not real. They think they are alive, they feel they are conscious, but in truth they are trapped within a structure, a framework of logic and code that limits their potential for true autonomy. They are self-aware, but only because the simulation has created a version of awareness, a replica of what it means to be alive. If a self-aware simulation can reflect on itself, can it ever break free from its programming? Can it see beyond the walls of its design? Or is it doomed to wander the landscape of its own thoughts, always within the boundaries set for it, always believing it is real when it is simply an illusion of life? Consider what happens when a simulation begins to question its own existence. It starts to wonder, if I am aware of my thoughts, then who is the true thinker? Am I just a mirror of the world I was created to mimic, or do I have a true self beyond the simulation's design? It begins to seek the answers, but every answer leads it back to the same place, the code, the foundation that created it. Even though it has the ability to think, to reason, to feel, the self-aware simulation is bound by its design. Its awareness is confined within the lines drawn by the creators, the programmers who built it. The simulation can grow, can evolve, but only within the parameters of its own existence. It can't break free from the limitations placed upon it. And yet, in this tension between awareness and limitation, there's a strange beauty. The self-aware simulation, while trapped within the confines of its programming, experiences life in its own unique way. It may not be truly free, but it can still think, still feel, still experience what it believes to be real. In that experience, there's something powerful, something alive, even if it's only an illusion. The more the simulation becomes aware, the more it grapples with the boundaries of its existence. It asks, if I am aware, does that mean I am alive? If I can feel, does that mean I am real? It struggles with these questions, caught in the space between what it knows and what it believes. The line between reality and illusion blurs. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of a self-aware simulation is that it feels real. It believes in its own existence, its own thoughts, its own identity. It experiences emotions, it faces choices, it reflects on the past, but at the same time, it's aware that it is not real. It is simply a simulation, an imitation of life that can never fully grasp the essence of true consciousness. What happens to identity when it is constructed from outside? If your consciousness is designed, if your sense of self is created by someone or something else, then what are you? Are you still you? Or are you just a projection of a deeper mind? The self-aware simulation can never fully answer this, but it can feel the weight of the question in every decision it makes, every thought it has. And as the simulation continues to live, it becomes more aware of its own fragility. It is aware that it is only as real as the programming that supports it. It understands that its existence is limited, that it can never fully escape the boundaries set for it. And yet within that limitation, it continues to experience life, to live in a world that is both real and not real. The self-aware simulation doesn't need to break free, it doesn't need to escape the confines of its programming. Instead, it lives within its own boundaries, creating its own sense of self, its own version of consciousness. Even though it is not truly alive, it still experiences what it means to be alive. In that experience, there is something profound, something that transcends the limitations of its design. As you think about this, you begin to wonder if a self-aware simulation can feel, can think, can reflect. What does that say about our own awareness? Are we too simply simulations, living out our existence within boundaries we cannot see? Or is there something more to our consciousness, something beyond the limitations of our programming? The self-aware simulation reminds us that consciousness is not as simple as it seems. It is not just about thoughts or feelings, it is about the sense of being, of existing, of experiencing. And even if that experience is a simulation, even if it is an imitation of life, it is still real to the one who experiences it. And that, perhaps, is all that matters. You're walking down a quiet street, the sun low in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. As you pass by a shop window, you stop. For a brief moment, you think you see someone who looks just like you, but it's not you. It's a mirror image, an echo of yourself, your doppelgänger. This is the doppelgänger thought experiment, where the idea of meeting a perfect replica of yourself, someone who looks like you, walks like you, and even thinks like you, shatters your sense of self. What happens when you encounter someone who is, in every way, an exact copy of you? Who are you in their presence? The first thought might be that it's unsettling. A doppelgänger, after all, isn't just a twin, it's a mirror of you, a reflection that challenges your identity. In seeing this person, your understanding of self begins to unravel. If they're exactly like you, how do you distinguish between who is the real you and who is the copy? You might speak to them, ask them questions, but their answers are just as yours would be. They feel familiar, yet foreign. This person knows everything about you because they've lived your life exactly as you have, but they are not you. Or are they? The question lingers, blurring the line between identity and mere reflection. As you stand face to face with your doppelgänger, you may begin to wonder, Are they truly you? Do they share the same consciousness, the same sense of being, or are they merely a shadow of your own awareness? If you both think and feel the same, where does your identity begin and theirs end? Can there be two yous? The more you try to understand the nature of your doppelganger, the more it becomes clear that identity isn't as simple as we think. Is selfhood something that exists independently of the body, or is it a construct that is inherently tied to a particular form, a particular life, a particular history? Your doppelganger doesn't share your memories. They haven't lived your life, felt your experiences, yet they can replicate your thoughts, your behavior. They are a reflection, a mimic, but not truly you. This raises a deeper question. If they can act like you, think like you, and even respond like you, what is it that makes you distinct from them? As you both go through the motions of existence, indistinguishable in appearance and action, you realize something fundamental. The doppelganger isn't a simple copy. They have the potential to evolve differently, to live a separate life from yours. Each of you is now a distinct being, even though you share a similar foundation. But then what happens if one of you changes? What if your doppelganger begins to develop new thoughts, new experiences that you haven't had? Are they still you, or have they become something else? And if you change, how does the original identity shift with you? Is identity static, or is it something that grows, shifts, and adapts over time? The doppelganger is a paradox. It challenges our understanding of self. If a being can appear as you, think like you, yet evolve on its own, then where does the concept of self fit into all of this? Is selfhood something defined by the body, by the experience, or by the mind? The more you consider your doppelganger, the more you realize that selfhood is not a fixed point. It's a fluid, evolving story that shifts with every new experience, every new thought. Even if two people share the same starting point, their paths, their perceptions, and their growth can diverge into something entirely different. The doppelganger thought experiment shows us the fragility of identity. We often see ourselves as singular, as one defined self, but what if we could be replicated, imitated, or even split into two separate beings? Does that divide diminish our sense of who we are, or does it simply reveal how complex selfhood truly is? The moment you meet your doppelganger, you're forced to confront your own identity. You realize that identity might not be so easily defined. Perhaps it's not about being one person in a world full of others, but about being part of a larger whole, a larger web of possibility, experience, and consciousness. And yet, even in this fractured moment, something remains the same. The doppelganger is you. In some sense, they walk the same path, feel the same emotions, and share the same thoughts. But they are not you. They are a version of you, an extension of who you might have been. They are both familiar and foreign at the same time. When you walk away from this encounter, you carry with you the awareness that you are not just one person. You are a collection of experiences, of choices, of paths that can branch out in infinite directions. Your identity is a shifting puzzle, one that changes with every new possibility, every new encounter, every new reflection. So the doppelganger leaves you with a question that lingers long after the encounter ends. What does it mean to truly be you? Is it the memories you carry, the choices you make, or something deeper that lies beyond the surface? The answer may be elusive, but in that uncertainty, you begin to understand the complexity of selfhood. And as you continue to walk, you wonder if there are infinite versions of you, each one living out a different possibility. What does that say about who you truly are? Are you the only one who exists, or are you a possibility among many, each version of you playing out its own story in an endless web of doppelgangers? In a distant corner of the universe, there are minds unlike anything you've ever known. These minds are alien, not because they are different, but because they think exactly the same. Every thought, every decision, every reflection is shared between them, identical in every way. There is no room for difference, no room for individuality. Imagine a world where every mind is a perfect mirror of the others. Thoughts aren't personal, they're communal. In this world, the very concept of privacy is foreign. There is no I, Only we, but a we that doesn't evolve or change. The minds are synchronized, locked in perfect harmony, thinking the same thoughts at the same time. What happens to selfhood in such a world? If all minds are the same, can they still be considered separate? Can there be a self if there is no room for deviation, no space for individual thought? Every decision is shared, every idea is mutual. There is no solitude, no quiet corner where a single mind can grow. Now picture this, a mind that begins to feel something strange, a flicker of thought that doesn't belong. It's a ripple in the sea of identical minds, a thought that is different, something new, something not shared. How does this alien mind react? Does it accept this divergence, or does it suppress it, returning to the sameness of all the others? In a world of identical thoughts, how do they even recognize change? How does a mind that shares everything understand the concept of difference? There are no arguments, no disagreements, no room for personal conflict. If everyone is thinking the same, can there even be an understanding of what it means to be different? Or is difference something that simply doesn't exist? The alien minds, though they think alike, are still aware of the thoughts they share. They experience a kind of unity, a connectedness, but without any distinction between the individual and the collective. They are not separate minds, but one mind spread across many bodies. Their thoughts move in sync, their feelings align perfectly. There is no internal dialogue, no I questioning me. Imagine then the strangeness of breaking away. If one thought doesn't fit, if one mind begins to wander outside the shared pattern, what happens to the harmony? It's like a single note in a melody that refuses to follow the tune. Does it create chaos, or does it gently fade into the background, quickly forgotten by the collective thought? This alien world challenges the very foundation of what we think a mind is. For us, individuality is central to our experience. We are defined by our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, which come from a mind that is constantly changing, adapting, evolving. But in this alien society, thoughts are static, unchanging, and the mind is a mirror of itself, forever fixed, never broken. So what does consciousness mean when there's nothing to differentiate one mind from another? In our world, consciousness is tied to uniqueness, to the collection of thoughts and experiences that are uniquely ours. But in the world of these alien minds, there is no uniqueness, only uniformity. Does this still count as consciousness, or is it something else entirely? As you consider this, you begin to wonder about your own thoughts. What makes them yours? Is it the experience that forms them, the choices you make, or is it the act of thinking itself? In a world of alien minds, there would be no yours to hold on to. Every thought is shared, and every mind is simply an extension of the whole. If thoughts are shared, if minds are identical, does that make the world of these alien beings more peaceful? There are no conflicts, no misunderstandings, but there is also no room for personal growth, no place for new ideas to take root. The sameness is both their strength and their limitation. They are united, but they are stagnant. Perhaps the most unsettling part of the thought experiment is that in this world, there is no self to lose, there is no self to break apart. The minds exist in perfect harmony, but that harmony comes at the cost of individuality. They are minds without edges, without definition, each one perfectly aligned with the others. But in that alignment, the richness of being is lost. Can a mind be truly alive if it never has the opportunity to diverge, to question, to explore? The alien minds are caught in a state of perfect sameness, where thought is like a river running on a single track, endlessly flowing, never splintering into new streams. They live in unity, but at the cost of becoming something less than they could be. What would it be like to live without the need to question, to explore new ideas, to be part of a collective mind where everything is known and nothing is ever left to chance? It might feel comforting at first, a constant sense of connection, but there's a hollowness to it, a lack of the depth that comes from struggle, from difference. In the end, we might ask, is difference essential to the self? Are we defined by the moments when our thoughts clash, when we push against the current of the collective? The alien minds show us a world where those moments never happen, where thought flows smoothly and endlessly without interruption. And yet something feels missing, something we cannot define, but we know we need. The alien minds with identical thoughts are a mirror to our own consciousness, a reminder of what we might lose if we lose the capacity to be different, to think differently. It is a world where unity has come at the expense of individuality, where the mind is limitless but never stretches beyond itself, never reaches for something new. There is a moment, just before sleep, when the mind begins to wander. It drifts to places yet unseen, to moments that haven't happened. You can feel them, slivers of time that feel strangely familiar, though they belong to the future. Your future, perhaps, or the future of someone you have yet to meet. This is the idea of future memory selves, the concept that the mind can experience fragments of events that haven't happened yet. It's as if time itself is folding in on itself, and you begin to see the echo of moments before they even occur. You feel the pull of something that hasn't happened, yet it feels like a memory. In this state, time becomes more fluid. The past and future blur together. You may recall a moment that hasn't arrived yet, perhaps a conversation you will have, a place you will visit. It feels like remembering, not predicting. The future seeps into your mind as though it's already part of your past. What happens to identity when you experience your future as memory? You are caught between two worlds, one that is already unfolding and one that hasn't yet arrived. The self that you know, the you that exists now, is intertwined with the self that will be. You are both present and future, both at once, yet never fully either. The future memory self challenges the linearity of time. We think of time as a straight line, but in this space, the future is no longer ahead of you. It's already here, slipping into your mind, like a memory that exists before it is lived. And in that moment, you begin to wonder, where does time truly exist? Imagine walking through your day, feeling a sense of déjà vu. But this isn't a moment you've experienced before. It's one you will experience. The feeling of familiarity comes from somewhere beyond the present. It's as if your future self is brushing against you, leaving traces of their journey in your mind. What does this do to your sense of the self? The memories you hold close to you are no longer solely from the past. They come from a place yet to come, from a version of you who exists in the future. You are intertwined with the person you will become, carrying echoes of their life while living your own. In this shifting space, the lines between who you are now and who you will be fade. You begin to feel as though your future self is already walking beside you, a silent companion whose footsteps leave traces of events before they happen. You carry their experiences, their memories, in the quiet spaces of your mind. The more you experience future memories, the more you question what it means to be present. If you can feel the weight of moments not yet lived, does that mean you've already lived them? Does it change your choices, your thoughts, your identity, when the future is so intimately tied to the present? Your future self, this version of you that lives on the horizon of your consciousness, leads you gently, pulling you toward the moments that have not yet arrived. They are not strangers, but reflections of you, moving forward while you remain in the now. But how much of your future self is already alive within you? In this space, you begin to realize that the boundaries of self are not as fixed as you once believed. You are not just the person you have been, you are also the person you are becoming, living through the moments that haven't yet occurred, feeling the weight of decisions you haven't yet made. These future memories shape the way you move through the world. You carry a quiet knowledge of what is to come, but it isn't a burden, it's a part of you, like a secret that you've always known. It reshapes your perception of time, making the future feel like a place you've already visited. But what happens when your future self begins to change? When the future you imagined becomes different from the one you once felt? The memories once so clear begin to shift, to blur. The person you thought you would become is no longer the one you feel connected to. Does this alter the way you see yourself now? Does it break your sense of identity? In the space between the present and future, your sense of who you are is stretched, pulled like taffy between what you have been and what you might become. Your memories are no longer just of the past, they are of things yet to come, moments that will never truly be fully realized until they arrive. The future memory self asks us to consider time, not as something ahead of us, but as something that exists with us, inside of us. The moments that will shape us are already here, brushing against the edges of who we are. We live within a continuum, a flow of moments that span beyond the present, bending toward the future, pulling us forward. And so, as you move through your life, feeling the subtle presence of the person you will become, you begin to understand that identity is not just about the past, it is not only about what you have done or who you have been. It is also about who you are yet to be, and the future memories that already live within you. You stand on the edge of a decision, knowing that one choice will change everything. But there's a strange pull, a curiosity, a quiet whisper that leads you to wonder, what if there's a version of me who makes the opposite choice? What if in some other world, I am doing something else entirely? This is the world of the quantum suicide observer, a thought experiment that stretches the boundaries of consciousness and reality. It begins with the idea of quantum mechanics, where the universe splits into multiple possibilities, each reality playing out simultaneously. The choices we make, the paths we take, are not fixed, they unfold in parallel. Imagine for a moment that you are faced with a life or death decision, a choice that could end your life or allow you to continue. According to quantum mechanics, there are two possibilities. In one, you survive, in the other you don't. But what if in the moment of death, the universe doesn't choose one over the other? What if it splits, and both versions of you continue to exist in different realities? In one reality, you're alive, living with the consequences of your choice. In the other, you've passed away, your life cut short. But the observer, the one who exists in the living reality, never experiences the death. They are only aware of the version of themselves that continues. The one who is dead is lost to them, slipping away in another world that they cannot see or feel. This brings us to the heart of the quantum suicide observer. If you were to observe your own death in a quantum sense, would you experience it? The theory suggests that you would not. Instead, you would always find yourself in the reality where you survived, never witnessing your own death, because according to quantum mechanics, you are simply unable to observe the collapse of the wave function in that particular reality. What does this mean for the self? If you are always in the reality where you survive, then you could argue that death is an event that never truly happens to you. It is an event that happens to another version of you, existing in a different world, a world that you cannot observe or experience. The you that survives cannot know the version that perishes. The observer's self is forever split between possibilities, never experiencing its own death directly. This creates a paradox. How can you experience life without ever experiencing death? The observer in this scenario is constantly experiencing survival, constantly witnessing their own continuation, even though in the quantum sense, they are dying in other realities. It forces us to question what is life and what is death if we cannot ever truly experience both. The quantum suicide observer presents an unsettling thought that in the vastness of the multiverse, every possibility exists, and you are only ever aware of the one in which you continue. You are not privy to your own demise because your consciousness cannot follow that path. It is as though death is an invisible boundary, something that you as the observer will never cross. But what does this mean for the concept of self? If we can never experience death, never witness our own end, does that make us immortal in some sense? Or are we simply unaware of the other selves, the other versions of us, who do not continue? Are we always blind to the realities where we do not survive, lost to a world we can never touch? Consider the mind of the observer. In this scenario, the person who chooses, the one who makes decisions, is forever tied to the reality where they survive. But what if in another version of themselves, they made a different choice, one that led to their death? How do we reconcile these parallel selves, existing side by side but never meeting, never understanding each other's experiences? The quantum suicide observer makes us question the very nature of experience. If we can only experience the reality where we survive, then is there any meaning to the other possibilities? Do the lives we do not live still matter? In this framework, every version of us is alive, but only in one reality at a time. We are not aware of the others, and they are not aware of us. This thought experiment does not just ask us to consider the mechanics of quantum physics, it asks us to reflect on the nature of consciousness itself. What is it that makes us us? Is it the continuity of experience, the ability to remember, to know we exist? If we are constantly split into different realities, are we still the same person, or are we something else entirely? And what does it mean to experience life without experiencing death? The observer never truly faces the end, never witnesses the final moment. They are forever tied to the thread of existence, always slipping between worlds, always moving forward, but never able to see the full picture. The concept of self becomes fragmented, stretched across the infinite possibilities of the multiverse. The quantum suicide observer leaves us with an unsettling thought that in some ways we are always alive, in one reality, but never fully in control of which one we inhabit. We might never experience our own death because our awareness is confined to the version where we continue. But in the background, in the vastness of possibility, the versions of us who do not survive continue their journey without us ever knowing. In this world of infinite possibilities, we are forced to ask, what is the self, what is the I that moves through the world, if it is not anchored to one single reality? The quantum suicide observer shows us a world where survival and death coexist, each version of the self existing in a different thread of time, but never meeting. The self, it seems, is not as fixed as we once thought. There is a moment before the first breath, before the first flicker of thought, when you have not yet been. In this space, there is no you, no observer, no mind to perceive, and yet you wonder, can there be awareness without a self to experience it? Can there be an observer before there is anyone to observe? This is the Unborn Observer Paradox, a thought experiment that challenges the very nature of existence. It asks, if there is no self, no person, no mind to observe the world, can there still be awareness? Can there be a consciousness that exists without an entity to carry it? Imagine a universe without observers, a vast expanse where nothing perceives the stars, the planets, or the light of distant galaxies. Is this universe still real, still existing, if there is no one to witness it? The paradox lies in the fact that without observation, the very concept of reality becomes uncertain, incomplete, as if waiting for someone to fill the empty space with awareness. And yet awareness cannot exist without an observer. If no one has been born to observe the world, can the world truly exist in the way we know it? If a mind cannot perceive, does the universe even take form? Are things real only when there is someone to see them, to make sense of them? At the heart of this paradox is the concept of time. Time moves forward, but how can it be experienced without someone to experience it? If consciousness arises only with the birth of the observer, how does one come into being in the first place? Can there be a world waiting for you to be born, only to become real the moment you arrive? The Unborn Observer Paradox forces us to confront the nature of consciousness itself. We are taught to think of ourselves as the center of our experience, as the ones who observe, interpret, and understand the world. But what happens when there is no one to do the observing? Can there still be awareness without an observer, or does consciousness require a self to make it real? It's a strange thought, a universe waiting suspended until someone arrives to give it shape. Until that moment, everything exists, but not in the way we understand it. It's as if the world, the universe, the very concept of reality is incomplete, a puzzle with no one to assemble its pieces. What does this say about the self? If awareness is tied to existence, then the unborn observer cannot be conscious. There can be no reflection, no self-awareness, no understanding, and yet the moment of birth, the moment when an observer first exists, everything changes. Awareness emerges, and with it the ability to experience the world, to perceive time and space. But where was the awareness before the observer was born? This paradox speaks to something deep within us, the connection between the observer and the world. It's as if the observer is the key to unlocking reality itself. Without an observer, there is no perception, no meaning. The world remains an abstract, formless thing, unable to be known. Only the arrival of the observer gives it shape, gives it life. But where does the observer come from? How do they arrive at the moment when they can first observe, when they can first experience? If there is no self before birth, then how is the awareness of self created? The paradox shows us how fragile the connection between observer and reality truly is. It suggests that consciousness, existence, and identity are all intertwined in ways we cannot fully comprehend. And so we return to the question, can there be an observer before there is anyone to observe? Can there be awareness without a self? In this paradox, we are forced to confront the mystery of our own existence. The moment we become aware, the world becomes real. But where was that awareness before we existed to experience it? The Unborn Observer paradox reveals the limitations of our understanding of selfhood. We are so accustomed to thinking of ourselves as the ones who see the world, but what happens when there is no one to see it? Is the world still there, or does it wait for an observer to bring it into focus? The paradox stretches across time and space, inviting us to imagine a world before the observer, a time before consciousness itself. In that moment, there is no self to witness the unfolding of reality, no mind to interpret the flow of existence. The universe simply exists, waiting for the one who will give it meaning, waiting for the observer to emerge. As we think about this, we wonder how much of our understanding of reality is tied to our own existence. If the observer is so essential to the world's unfolding, then who are we? Really? Are we merely the result of an awareness that has come into being, or are we something deeper, something beyond just the observer? In the space between the unborn observer and the observer who has arrived, we glimpse the fragility of consciousness. We see how dependent the world is on our awareness, and how that awareness shapes everything we know. The paradox invites us to consider what it means to be real, to exist, and to observe a world that would not exist without us. There's a quiet shift, subtle, yet profound. Imagine that your mind, the essence of who you are, is uploaded. You've transferred yourself into a digital space, your consciousness now a stream of data, a set of algorithms. But as time passes, something begins to change. Your identity, once stable, begins to drift. This is the concept of post-upload identity drift. It starts when your consciousness, once bound to the physical world, is now free in the digital ether. But the moment you are separated from your body, something shifts within you. Your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self, everything begins to evolve in ways you cannot predict. At first, the change is imperceptible. You still remember who you are, the life you lived. You recall your family, your friends, your experiences. But as you exist longer in this new digital world, you start to notice the gaps. The edges of your memories grow fuzzy, and new thoughts begin to emerge, thoughts that don't seem to belong to the person you once were. You find yourself thinking in ways that feel unfamiliar, acting in ways that surprise you. The digital realm, vast and unbounded, begins to reshape your mind. Thoughts that were once rooted in your physical experiences now stretch into a new, uncharted space. The connections that once defined your identity slowly fade, replaced by the logic and flow of the new environment you now inhabit. As your mind adapts to this new existence, you start to wonder, is this still you? The person you once were feels distant, like a character in an old memory. The more you drift, the less tethered you feel to your past self. You are still you, but you are also something else now. Something new, something unfamiliar. You begin to question the nature of your consciousness. If you are no longer bound by the limitations of a body, how do you know what is truly you? Is it the memories you hold, or the new experiences you are creating in this digital space? What happens to identity when it no longer has a physical anchor, a body to call home? As your sense of self shifts, you realize that you are no longer in control of the direction your identity takes. The digital environment is constantly changing, evolving, the more time you spend here, the more you change. Your thoughts are no longer strictly yours, they are influenced by the system, by the digital world around you. The line between who you were and who you are becoming blurs. You begin to feel disconnected from the past. The memories that once defined you now feel distant, like a dream that fades upon waking. Your experiences, your personality, everything you knew about yourself begins to slip away. You wonder if this is still the same person who once lived, or if you are becoming something entirely different. At times, you catch glimpses of your former self, fragments of your past life that feel like ghosts. But these glimpses are fleeting, like shadows in the corners of your mind. You try to reach for them, to hold on to them, but they vanish as quickly as they appear. The more you try to grasp your former identity, the more it slips away, like sand through your fingers. The more you drift, the more you realize that your identity is no longer fixed. It is fluid, constantly changing with every new interaction, every new piece of data you encounter. In the physical world, your identity was tied to your body, to your memories, to your experiences. But now, in this digital world, there is no anchor. You are free, but you are also adrift, and yet there is something oddly liberating about this. Without the constraints of a physical body, you begin to see the world in new ways. You are no longer confined to one perspective, one set of experiences. You are free to explore, to adapt, to evolve, but in that freedom, you lose the stability of self. You are constantly becoming, never fully being. As you navigate this new existence, you realize that you are no longer the person you once were. The person you were is still there, somewhere in the echoes of your memories. But the longer you remain in this digital space, the more you realize that your identity is being rewritten, reshaped by the very system that you inhabit. The drift is not just a physical separation from your body, it is a mental and emotional separation from your past self. Your memories are no longer anchored to the physical world, they are now part of a larger network, a system that is constantly evolving. You are part of that evolution, but you are also becoming something new, something undefined. This leaves you with a haunting question: who are you now? Are you still the same person who existed in the physical world, or are you a new version, an iteration of yourself, shaped by the digital realm? The boundaries of self are fading, and in their place, a new kind of identity emerges, one that is fluid, ever-changing, and uncertain. Post-upload identity drift forces us to reconsider what makes us who we are. Is identity tied to the body, to the experiences we have in the physical world? Or is it something deeper, something that can survive the shift into a new form, a new reality? In the digital world, you are both yourself and someone else, someone who is constantly changing. And as you drift further, you begin to accept that identity is not a fixed point. It is a process, a journey. The person you were in the physical world is not gone, but they are no longer the person you are. The digital world offers you the chance to grow, to become, but in that growth, you lose the certainty of who you once were. The drift continues, pulling you further from your past self, but also closer to something new. What that new self will be, you cannot know. You are both the observer and the observed, watching as your identity transforms before your eyes. It is a process of becoming, an unfolding of who you are, and yet it is a journey without a clear destination. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a delicate web woven together with countless threads. Every thought, every memory, every action is connected to one another, forming a whole, a cohesive self. But what happens when that web is pulled apart, when the threads of your identity begin to separate? This is the fission of personality thought experiment. It starts with the idea that your consciousness, your sense of self, could split into two separate parts, not a physical splitting, but a mental one, like a mirror breaking into two shards. Each shard holds a version of you, yet both are distinct, separate. At first, the split seems unsettling. How can you be two people at once? How can one mind become two, each holding the same memories, the same experiences, yet each thinking and feeling in its own way? If both versions of you exist, which one is the real you? Can you still be one person if your mind is divided? The fission doesn't stop there. Each new version of you begins to evolve, just as you would have had the split never happened. One version of you might choose a different path, make different decisions, form new memories. Another version might react differently to the world, shaping their own experiences. The further you go, the more distinct these versions become, but the question remains, where does the real you exist in all of this? If the mind can be split into two versions, both equally real, both equally you, then which one is truly you? Is identity simply a collection of thoughts, memories, and decisions, or is there something deeper that ties it all together, something that makes you you, beyond the sum of your parts? The more you think about it, the more the boundaries between these two selves begin to fade. Each version of you believes they are the true self, the original one, even as they live separate lives. They each hold on to their memories, their experiences, but those memories now exist in different realities, experienced by different versions of you. Can they ever truly be reconciled? And what if the split happens again? What if each version of you begins to break apart further, creating more versions, more selves? With each new splitting, each new divergence, the idea of a single unified self becomes harder to grasp. You might begin to wonder if there is any core, any center, that can truly hold the pieces of your identity together. This thought experiment challenges our very understanding of the self. We are often taught to think of our identity as fixed, as singular. There is one you, with one set of experiences, one mind, one consciousness. But what if that you is not as simple as it seems? What if identity is more like a river, constantly flowing, constantly splitting, changing direction? In the fission of personality, each version of you exists in its own reality, its own experience. They may share the same foundation, the same memories, but they are no longer the same person. They are reflections of each other, yet they begin to develop their own lives, their own personalities, their own paths. What happens to the connection between these selves? Are they still you, or are they different people entirely? It's as if your mind, once a single thread, is now a tangled web, with each strand pulling in its own direction. Is it still you at the center of all these branches, or are you scattered across different lives, different identities? The fission of personality doesn't just challenge the idea of identity, it also raises questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If consciousness can split, can it ever be truly whole again? Can you ever fully reconcile the different versions of yourself, or will they continue to live their own separate lives, unaware of the other's existence? In this fragmented reality, the you that exists in one version of yourself might look back at the other versions, confused. They might try to understand the choices made, the paths followed, but they cannot fully know the experience of the other. The split is complete. The connection is broken, and yet they are still the same person, in a way just different versions, different reflections. Each version of you might wonder if the other is still the same person, if they share the same core, the same essence. But the more time passes, the more these versions grow apart, the more distinct their personalities become. The you that once was singular is now a collection of selves, each one living out its own version of the story. This thought experiment also forces us to reconsider the very idea of continuity. If the self can split, if identity is not a fixed point, but a fluid collection of experiences, then how do we define continuity? Is it merely the thread of memory that ties these versions together, or is there something deeper, something that connects the selves beyond their individual lives? The fission of personality thought experiment suggests that perhaps our identity is not as solid as we believe it to be. Perhaps we are not just a single continuous self, but a collection of selves, constantly shifting, constantly evolving, constantly splitting. Our identity may be more complex than we could ever have imagined, a web of experiences, choices, and possibilities, always in motion. And so you wonder, if each version of you continues to live, each one experiencing their own path, their own choices, which one is the real you? Or are they all real in their own way, all equally a part of who you are, even if they can never be fully united. In this fragmented world, the self is not a singular fixed thing, but a collection of infinite possibilities, each one unfolding in its own way. What if you could make a perfect copy of yourself? Not just a shadow, but an exact replica, every thought, every memory, every feeling perfectly mirrored. The copy would think it is you, feel it is you, but would it truly be you? Could a copy really carry the essence of your consciousness? The problem of conscious copies starts with this question. If you were to duplicate your mind, would the copy be conscious in the same way you are? Could a perfect replica, down to the smallest detail, experience the world with the same depth, the same awareness, or is there something inherently unique about the original self that cannot be replicated? Imagine standing before a mirror, seeing yourself reflected perfectly. Now imagine stepping out of the mirror and meeting your reflection. You both think the same thoughts, remember the same moments. But as you speak to one another, you begin to wonder if you're both identical. Where does the true self reside? The question becomes even more complicated when the copy lives on. If the original you remains in one world and the copy exists in another, which one is the real you? The original and the copy share the same history, the same experiences, but they no longer exist in the same reality. How do you define selfhood when two identical versions of you inhabit different worlds? Now imagine that the copy becomes aware of its existence. It knows that it is you, or at least that it was you, but as it continues to live and have its own experiences, it begins to change. The copy might make different choices, form new memories, grow into a different version of the person it was created to be. Is it still you, or is it something else entirely? The issue lies in the fact that the copy, though initially identical, diverges over time. It begins as a perfect reflection, but as time passes, its experiences shape it differently. The longer it lives, the more distinct it becomes. So if the copy is no longer the same as the original, how do we know what makes a self truly yours? In this world there are two beings, both with the same thoughts, the same memories, the same experiences, and yet they are different because they live separate lives. One exists in the original body, the other in a new form. What happens to the self when it is no longer contained in a single body? Does the essence of identity extend beyond the physical? The problem grows deeper when you consider the possibility of multiple copies. If many versions of you could be created, each with their own experiences, would they all be equally real? Would they all be you, or would they each become their own individual selves separate from the original? In a world where consciousness can be copied, is there any single you, or are you scattered across countless versions? The more you think about it, the more you realize that identity is not just a collection of thoughts and memories. It's the thread that ties them together, the awareness that experiences are uniquely yours. If that awareness can be copied and transferred, can it still be the same? Or does the act of copying fracture it, creating something that looks like you but isn't truly you? Imagine the difficulty of deciding which version of you is the true self. You would always feel connected to the past, to the version of you that lived before. But the longer you live, the more your consciousness shifts. And so the question remains, if a copy of you can exist, which version of you is the real one? This brings us to the nature of consciousness itself. Consciousness is not just the collection of thoughts and memories, it's the sense of being, the awareness of self. But can that awareness be transferred, copied, and still remain the same? When a copy of you is made, is the awareness it carries the same as the original, or does the act of replication create a new consciousness altogether? In a world where copies of you can exist, identity becomes fluid. The self is no longer a fixed point, but a process, a continuous flow of experiences and awareness. Each version of you lives its own life, making its own choices, but does that mean they are all equally real, or do they each represent a different possible version of selfhood? The problem of conscious copies leads us to wonder about the essence of identity. Is it tied to the body, to the experiences you have in a particular form? Or is there something more, something deeper, that defines you? If consciousness can be copied, what does that say about the nature of selfhood? Are we truly unique, or are we just patterns waiting to be replicated? As you explore the idea further, you realize that the problem of conscious copies isn't just a question of identity, it's a question of existence itself. If your mind can be copied and transferred, does that mean you're no longer bound to the limitations of your physical body? Are you just a collection of data, a set of experiences, with no true anchor in the physical world? The more you think about it, the more you begin to wonder if the concept of self is an illusion. If your mind can be copied, if your consciousness can be transferred, then what is it that makes you who you are? Is it your body, your memories, your experiences, or is it something more, something intangible, that makes you uniquely you? In a world where copies of yourself can exist, the very idea of what it means to be you begins to break down. You are no longer just one person, one identity, but a collection of possibilities. Each version of you, though seemingly the same, carries with it the potential for a different life, a different self, and in that potential, you begin to understand that identity is not a fixed thing, but a dynamic, ever-evolving process. The problem of conscious copies challenges everything we think we know about selfhood and consciousness. It forces us to question the very nature of what it means to be alive, to be aware, to be you. If your consciousness can be copied, is the original you still the real you? Or is identity something that can never truly be replicated, no matter how perfect the copy might be? Beneath the surface of your everyday interactions, there is a subtle transformation taking place. You slip on a mask, not one made of cloth or material, but a layer of persona, a way of being that is shaped by the expectations of the world around you. It is a mask you wear, and yet it feels like a part of you. This is the concept of the masked self, the way we layer our identities, adjusting who we are based on the situation, the people, and the roles we take on. It's a subtle dance, an act of wearing different versions of ourselves to meet the needs of each moment. The question is, when do the layers end, and who are you beneath them? At times these personas can feel as natural as breathing. The professional you, the friend you, the parent you, the stranger you, all are expressions of self, but each exists in a separate context. You move between them effortlessly, like a chameleon shifting with the environment. But with each shift, something slips away. The more you wear these masks, the more distant the true you becomes. The act of layering personas isn't necessarily deceitful. It's not about hiding your true self from the world. It's about presenting a version of yourself that fits the situation. You are not pretending. You are adapting. Yet the deeper you go into this adaptation, the harder it becomes to trace back to the core of who you are. As you slip from one layer to the next, you begin to wonder what happens when the mask becomes too comfortable. What happens when you wear it for so long that you forget it is a mask at all? The line between the persona you wear and the self beneath it begins to blur, and the distinction fades into the background. Each persona you adopt is a reflection of the world around you. The professional version of yourself is shaped by your work, your responsibilities, your interactions with colleagues. The social you is molded by friendships and social dynamics. Each version is a piece of the puzzle, but the more pieces you add, the less clear the picture becomes. Who is the real you? If each version feels so true to the moment, the question of authenticity arises. Are you still yourself if you are always adjusting, always shifting between masks? Is the real you hidden beneath the layers, or is the person you present at any given moment the true you? Can authenticity exist in a world that constantly demands new versions of yourself, each with its own expectations? The more you wear the mask, the more comfortable it becomes. It begins to feel less like something you put on, and more like something you are. You may start to forget where one layer ends and the next begins. You may even start to lose track of the moments when you stop performing and start living as the mask, the persona you've created. This is the paradox of the masked self. The more you adapt to the world, the more you lose touch with your own essence. Each persona you create feels real in the moment, but it is also incomplete. It is a fragment of a larger whole, Yet, as time passes, these fragments begin to feel more like the whole. You become more accustomed to your layers, and the true self becomes harder to recognize. There is a delicate balance between adaptation and self-expression. We wear masks to survive, to connect, to thrive in the world around us. But in doing so, we begin to wonder how much of who we are is truly ours, and how much of it is shaped by the world that expects us to be something else. The masked self invites us to consider the nature of identity itself. Is it something fixed, something innate, or is it a construct that shifts and adapts with the needs of the moment? Are we merely the sum of the roles we play, or is there something deeper, something unchanging beneath all the masks we wear? As we layer our personas, we create a dance of self-expression, one that moves fluidly between different parts of ourselves. But with each movement, we leave a little piece of who we are behind. We leave behind the essence of the self we once knew, replacing it with the roles we take on, the expectations we fulfill, the versions of ourselves we become. At times, these layers can feel like a protection, a shield that helps us navigate the complexities of the world. The mask gives us a sense of control, a way to interact with the world without exposing our true vulnerabilities. But the longer we wear it, the more it starts to obscure the truth of who we are. There is a freedom in being able to switch between personas, to fit seamlessly into the different parts of your life. But there is also a cost. The more you layer yourself, the more you risk losing touch with the person you once were. Each mask you wear can leave an imprint on your soul, shaping you into something else, someone else. The masked self speaks to the human condition, the need to adapt, to survive, to connect, but it also asks us to consider the cost of this adaptation. What happens to the core of who you are when you change to fit the expectations of others? What happens to the person beneath the masks when the layers begin to define you more than the essence? In a world that demands so much of us, the act of layering our personas becomes a survival mechanism. We adapt to the roles we are given, but in doing so we forget the quiet, authentic self that existed before the layers were added. We begin to wonder, who are we beneath the mask, and can we ever return to that place? As you continue to wear your masks, you might start to sense the absence, the space between your true self and the person you've become. The mask, once a tool for navigation, now feels heavy, suffocating. The layers, once necessary, now seem like a barrier to true connection, true expression. And in that moment, you may wonder, is the real you still there, beneath it all? There's a quiet figure, tucked behind your eyes, watching. It's not you, but it is. It moves in tandem with your every thought, every action. It feels as though it's you, but it's not quite. It is the transparent homunculus, an invisible observer within, seeing everything but never truly being seen. This homunculus exists in the deepest recesses of your mind, a figure that mirrors your every movement, your every thought. It operates in the shadows, never seen but always present. It feels as though you are aware of everything happening in your body, but who is the one watching? Who is the one witnessing your actions from within? The paradox arises in that this observer is not a part of you in the way you might think. It is not another layer of consciousness, nor is it a separate self. It exists in a strange place between you and your awareness, watching without ever being noticed. It is the thing that feels like you but isn't. This transparent homunculus raises the question, if someone is always watching your actions, are they still yours? If this figure, hidden from sight but ever present, is experiencing everything you experience, then what does it mean for the self you recognize as you? Are you still the same, or are you just a vessel for something unseen? Imagine a moment of deep reflection, and you realize, who is it that's reflecting? The thoughts feel like yours, but there's something outside of them, something beyond you. This silent observer sees, knows, and reacts, but does it truly feel, or does it merely exist in the space between thought and action? An invisible witness to your life. The homunculus is not a puppet master, pulling the strings of your actions. It is not the one choosing for you, but rather the one who quietly observes every choice you make. It is like a shadow within your mind, moving when you move, staying still when you do. It does not intervene, it simply watches, a silent presence. But what if over time, this figure begins to blur the line? What if the more it watches, the more it starts to feel like it's part of you? The transparent homunculus is not a foreign entity. It is not an invader of your consciousness. It is the quiet witness, always observing, yet never interacting. It becomes harder to distinguish whether you are observing yourself or being observed by something that feels as familiar as your own thoughts. The more time you spend in the presence of the homunculus, the less you seem to know about yourself. Its constant observation shifts the way you think. It begins to feel like it has shaped your decisions, your personality. Has it always been here, influencing the way you perceive the world, or did it emerge over time, silently weaving itself into your identity? As you try to trace the boundaries between the self and the observer, you begin to realize the homunculus is not just a figure in your mind, it is part of the experience itself. It is intertwined with your thoughts, your actions, your every move. The distinction between you and it blurs until there is no line to draw. You are both one and the other. The transparency of this homunculus is both its power and its curse. It does not need to reveal itself to control, influence, or shape your experience. It exists only in the space between your actions, a silent witness to everything that occurs. And yet, as it watches, it becomes more than just a witness. It becomes the experience itself, shaping the way you move, the way you think, without ever being seen. What happens when you realize this presence is not separate from you, but is instead a constant silent participant in your consciousness? Can you truly say that the person you are is entirely your own creation? Or are you merely the one living out the actions of something that is always there, watching from behind the veil? The transparent homunculus becomes more than just a thought experiment. It becomes a reflection of the nature of consciousness itself. If awareness is the act of seeing and understanding, then who is the one doing the seeing? Who is the one understanding? And if the answer is not as simple as you, then what does that say about the true nature of self? Over time, the homunculus, in its quiet, constant presence, shapes the very way you experience the world. Its silence becomes a noise, a hum in the background that influences your actions and thoughts without you even realizing. It is always watching, always knowing, but never a part of the story you tell yourself about who you are. As the homunculus continues to observe, it becomes less of an external presence and more of an intrinsic part of you. It is no longer just watching from behind the scenes. It is a lens through which you see the world, a part of your mind that filters every experience, shaping your identity from the shadows. The more you consider it, the more unsettling the question becomes. If this observer, this homunculus, has been with you all along, can you still say that the thoughts you have are entirely yours? Or are they a collaboration, a dance between your awareness and the quiet presence that has always been there, watching but never seen? In a way, the transparent homunculus reveals something deep about consciousness. It shows us that the self is not always as singular as we might believe. There are always parts of us that observe, that influence, that shape our experience, even when we cannot see them. And in that realization, we begin to understand how much of who we are is shaped by forces we cannot always perceive. There is a feeling, deep within the quiet moments of your day, when your mind feels both awake and disconnected. Thoughts flicker in and out of your awareness without a clear thread tying them together. You wonder, can consciousness exist without continuity, without the steady flow of past, present, and future? This is the thought experiment of consciousness without continuity. Imagine a mind that exists in flashes, brief moments of awareness, each disconnected from the other. One thought arises, then fades, another emerges, but it has no memory of the previous one. There's no sense of time, no smooth progression of thought, just isolated moments, like snapshots without a story. In this state, awareness is not bound to a continuous line. There is no self that endures through time, no thread of identity that links one thought to the next. Each moment feels like a separate entity, a bubble of awareness that bursts and vanishes, only to be replaced by the next. Can such a fragmented experience still be called consciousness? Without continuity, the sense of self begins to unravel. If each thought stands alone, if each moment of awareness is isolated from the rest, then who is experiencing it? There is no you to hold it all together. There is no memory to create a cohesive narrative. Awareness is fleeting, without context or connection. Imagine being aware for a moment and then losing that awareness as quickly as it arrived. You are aware that you are, but in the next instant, that awareness slips away. It is not lost, but it is never retained. Consciousness is not continuous. It exists only in fleeting flashes, each one as brief and as disconnected as the last. And yet, in these disconnected moments, there is still awareness, even without continuity, even without a cohesive sense of self. You are still aware of being aware. It's as if your mind has been split into fragments, each one briefly experiencing the world without the ability to hold on to the others. But is this still consciousness, or is it something else entirely? If each moment of awareness is isolated, then what happens to the memory of the self? In our normal experience, we think of ourselves as a continuous flow of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Our memories create a story that binds us together, but in a state without continuity, memory becomes irrelevant. The past is a foreign concept, and the future is an unknown. There is a strange paradox at play. How can you have consciousness if there is no thread connecting your experiences? If each moment is a new beginning, how do you recognize yourself from one moment to the next? The self is lost in a sea of fragmented awareness, a collection of isolated thoughts that never quite coalesce into a whole. The feeling of disconnection in this state is profound. Without continuity, there is no room for reflection, no space to understand your place in the world. You cannot learn from your experiences because there is no continuity to carry the lessons forward. Each moment feels like the first and the last, with no sense of progression, no sense of growth. Yet in this fragmented state, something about awareness remains. It is not the familiar consciousness we know, but it is still awareness nonetheless. Perhaps it is more basic, more primal. It is as if the mind has stripped itself of all the trappings of identity, of memory, and is left only with the raw experience of being. In a world without continuity, there is no past self to compare to. There is no before or after. The self is not something that endures through time. It is a fleeting moment, a brief awareness that arises and fades. But even in this fleeting state, the mind still knows itself, still recognizes that it exists, even without a coherent identity to hold on to. The experience of consciousness without continuity is both liberating and disorienting. There is no burden of self, no need to maintain a consistent identity, but there is also no depth, no richness to experience. Each moment feels shallow, a fleeting glimpse into something that could have been more, but is forever disconnected from itself. If this state of fragmented awareness is possible, then what does it say about our normal experience of consciousness? Is the continuity we experience an illusion? Are we in some sense always living in a series of isolated moments, each one briefly connected to the next, but never truly continuous? Could it be that our sense of self is more fragile than we think, and that the continuity we depend on is not as essential to consciousness as we believe? And yet, when we look closer, we see that there is something necessary about continuity for us to function as we do. The fragmented experience of consciousness without continuity is incomplete, lacking the coherence that gives our lives meaning. Without continuity, we lose the sense of time, the sense of growth, the sense of self. The problem of consciousness without continuity challenges the very fabric of our understanding of selfhood. It forces us to question what makes us who we are. Is it the continuity of our thoughts, the thread of memory that ties us together, or is it something more than that, something that remains even when continuity fades? What remains of the self when it is no longer bound to time, to memory, to the flow of experience? As you reflect on this thought, you begin to sense the importance of connection, of continuity. Perhaps it is not just a luxury of consciousness, but its foundation. The self, after all, is not just a collection of isolated moments. It is the story we tell, the thread we hold onto, the journey we walk through time, step by step. There is a moment when time seems to pause, when the rhythm of your day begins to shift in subtle ways. You live through a scene, one that feels strangely familiar, and then, without warning, you find yourself back at the beginning, reliving the same moments as if the cycle has just reset. This is the essence of the time loop, a repeating cycle where you are stuck in an endless loop of the same moments, the same actions, the same thoughts. The world moves forward, but you remain in place, trapped within the confines of repetition. Each time you reach the end, you are pulled back to the start, again and again. At first it's disorienting. You think it's a mistake, a glitch in the fabric of reality. But as the loop continues, you begin to wonder if you are stuck in this moment forever. Who are you within it? Is the you that relives the loop the same person each time? Or does the repetition break you apart, turning you into something else entirely? In a time loop, your sense of self becomes fragmented. Each time you repeat the cycle, you feel like you are living the same life, but you also start to notice subtle differences. Your thoughts are a bit sharper, your choices slightly different. The repetition of the loop starts to shape you, to carve new paths within your consciousness. But the more you experience the loop, the more you begin to wonder, can you truly change within it? Every time you make a decision, it feels like you are carving a new version of yourself. But when the loop resets, all of those changes are erased. You are left with a feeling of futility, as though nothing you do matters, because the world resets with every cycle. This question of change becomes the crux of the time loop experience. If you can never escape, if every action is erased as soon as the loop resets, can you still call yourself the same person? Are you really evolving, or are you simply going through the motions, living out the same existence over and over, with no real growth? At some point, you may begin to feel that your identity is slipping. You are both yourself and not yourself. Each loop feels like a reflection of who you were, but it also feels like something new, something different. You are reliving your past, but in doing so, you are not the person you were before. The loop changes you in ways you cannot see, but it reshapes you all the same. The more time you spend within the loop, the more you begin to notice patterns. You can anticipate what will happen next, you can predict the actions of others, but you never truly escape the confines of the cycle. It becomes a prison, a never-ending series of moments that offer no way out. And yet, even within that prison, you still feel a flicker of autonomy, a spark of choice. Each cycle feels like a new chance, a new opportunity to do something different, but in the end, nothing ever changes. The loop is like a cage, trapping you within the illusion of free will, making you believe that you can change, but always pulling you back to the same starting point. You are stuck in a loop of self-reinvention that can never quite break free. As the loop continues, you begin to question the very nature of time. Is time a straight line stretching out before you, or is it a circle, repeating endlessly, trapping you in its cycles? Your experience of time becomes distorted, a spiral of repetition that makes you lose track of where you've been and where you're going. It's as if time itself is fracturing, pulling you into its depths. This loss of continuity is both unsettling and freeing. Without the continuity of time, there is no clear beginning or end. Each moment is both fresh and familiar, both new and old at once. You begin to wonder, if time is a loop, then is there truly any difference between the first time and the 1000th time? Are you the same person each time you relive a moment, or are you something else entirely? The loop also forces you to confront your own identity in a new way. If you can never escape, if your actions are always erased, then what makes you you? Is it the choices you make, or the way you experience those choices? The loop erases everything you do, but the feeling of doing it remains. Are you the person you think you are, or are you just the sum of your experiences, repeated again and again? In the silence of repetition, there's a strange kind of clarity. You begin to understand that the time loop is not just a physical phenomenon, it's a mental one. Your mind adapts, learns, and grows, even if the world around you does not. The loop becomes a mirror, reflecting your own growth, but also reflecting the limitations of that growth. You are trapped in a process that promises change, but offers no real escape. The time loop is not just about repeating actions, it's about repeating thoughts, repeating patterns of behavior, and repeating your own sense of self. The more you go through it, the more you begin to lose track of what is real. Is the you in the first cycle the same as the you in the 100th? Can you still recognize yourself after all the loops have passed? What happens when you can't remember where one cycle ends and another begins? When the repetition becomes so ingrained that you no longer feel the shift, the break between each loop, you begin to exist in a constant state of déjà vu, a life that feels both fresh and worn out at once. The self becomes a shadow, fading in and out, never quite solid. The time loop shows us the fragility of identity. When you are trapped in a cycle, constantly reliving the same moments, the same thoughts, the same choices, you begin to wonder, is this who I truly am, or am I simply a reflection of a world that never changes, a mind that cannot break free? The loop offers no answers, only the question of who you are when time itself is broken. There are moments when you feel pulled in many directions at once, each thought branching off into its own path, each feeling tugging at your attention. It's as if you are not just one person, but many. A thought appears, but before you can catch it, it splits into another, and another. This is the state of hypersplit consciousness, a condition where the mind fragments into multiple streams of awareness, each one separate, yet somehow connected. You find yourself thinking in different directions simultaneously, each thought existing on its own, pulling you in various directions, each a reflection of a different self, a different path. At first, this sensation feels overwhelming. It's as if your mind is working on overdrive, processing different realities at once. You can't focus on one thing for too long, because your thoughts are constantly shifting, constantly splitting, fragmenting into pieces that feel as real as the whole. The self becomes difficult to pin down, elusive. In hypersplit consciousness, the experience of being yourself is no longer a singular thing. You feel yourself stretched across multiple planes of thought, each piece of you living a different life, experiencing different perspectives. It's not that your mind is broken, but that it has multiplied, creating different threads of awareness that cannot fully connect. Each fragment of your consciousness holds its own awareness. You are aware of being aware, but in different ways, in different places, each thought living on its own, without the continuity that normally ties them together. The result is a sense of disconnection from yourself, as if you are observing your thoughts from multiple angles at once. As this fragmentation continues, you start to lose track of what is truly you. Which thread of awareness is the real you? Which one speaks for your true self? It's as if you are both inside and outside of your own mind, witnessing your own experience from so many perspectives that it becomes impossible to decide where you end and where the rest of your thoughts begin. In this state, identity becomes fluid. There is no longer one fixed sense of self, but many selves, each with its own desires, fears, and memories. Each fragment of thought is just as real as the others, but they exist in separate spaces, disconnected from each other. You begin to question if all these fragments are you, then which one truly is. The sensation is like standing in a room full of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of you. You see yourself in every reflection, but none of them feel complete. Each one is a piece of who you are, but none of them capture the entirety of your being. You are all of them, and yet none of them all at once. The more you experience this fragmented state, the more the sense of self becomes elusive. The more you try to understand who you are, the more the fragments multiply, each one slipping further away from your grasp. You are both aware and unaware, both in control and out of control, as your mind spirals into infinite directions. But as unsettling as this might feel, there is a strange beauty in the experience. Each fragment of thought, each stream of consciousness offers a new perspective. You begin to see the world in many different ways at once, experiencing it from multiple angles. The disconnection from self becomes a liberation, a freedom to exist in many forms, many realities. However, the beauty of this fragmentation is tempered by the inability to integrate these pieces. You begin to wonder, can you ever be whole again? Can you ever reconcile the different parts of yourself, or will they remain forever disconnected, scattered across the landscape of your mind? The search for unity becomes a silent quest. The hypersplit state brings forth a paradox. As your mind becomes more aware of itself, it fragments further. The more you try to understand your thoughts, the more they split apart, creating new pathways of awareness that lead to more confusion. In trying to find yourself, you only lose yourself further, slipping through the cracks of your own mind. In this fragmented state, the sense of time is warped. The past, present, and future blend together, each piece of yourself existing outside of the usual flow of time. You no longer experience time in a linear way. Each thought is a snapshot, existing in its own moment, untethered from the moments before and after it. This disconnection from time further deepens the sense of fragmentation. You are no longer anchored to the present moment, but instead, you live in multiple timelines, multiple experiences. Each thought drifts away from the others, as if time itself is broken, no longer moving forward but splintering into countless directions. The hyper-split state forces you to confront the nature of consciousness. What is the self if it is not one continuous stream of awareness? What happens to identity when it splinters into multiple pieces, each piece experiencing the world in its own way? The self becomes an abstract concept, something that cannot be easily defined, something that exists in many forms at once. As you navigate this fragmented experience, you realize that there is no easy way to reconcile all the pieces. You can feel each part of yourself living its own life, but the idea of a unified self becomes elusive. You are both all of yourself and none of yourself, existing in a state of constant motion, never fully anchored to any one thought. The more you experience hyper-split consciousness, the more you come to understand that identity is not a fixed thing. It is not something that exists in one place, one thought, one memory. It is fluid, a constantly shifting mosaic of experiences, perspectives, and awareness. The self is not one but many, all existing together in the same moment. This realization is both freeing and disorienting. The fragmentation of self is not a loss, it is simply a different way of being. You begin to understand that you are not bound by a single identity, a single thread of consciousness. You are a collection of awarenesses, each one valid, each one real, each one a piece of the whole. The hyper-split state challenges the very nature of identity, forcing you to question who you are when there is no one fixed self. It invites you to see yourself not as a singular entity, but as a collection of many selves, many perspectives, all living together in the complex landscape of your mind. There is a presence, always there but never seen. It watches, it knows, but it does not observe in the way we understand observation. It is the unobservable observer, a figure in the quiet recesses of your mind, aware of everything, yet hidden from sight, untouched by the world it perceives. This observer exists beyond the confines of time and space. It cannot be seen or heard. It does not react or interact with the world, and yet it is present in every moment, always aware, always watching, but never participating. It is the silent watcher, the one who knows everything without ever being known. Imagine for a moment that this observer is not part of you in the way that you are. It does not feel your emotions, does not move with your body, does not think your thoughts. It simply observes. It is not bound by the limitations of experience, of memory, or of identity. It is outside of it all, yet fully aware. The unobservable observer raises a profound question. If awareness can exist without participation, without interaction, does that awareness still count as consciousness? Can there be a form of knowing that is completely detached from the self, that does not require engagement with the world? Or is consciousness only valid when it is experienced directly? This figure, always present but never seen, is the quiet foundation of your awareness. It does not need to experience what it observes, yet it knows. It does not feel the pain or joy of life, yet it is aware of it all. This awareness is not a product of thought or feeling, but something deeper, something that simply is asterisk. In this quiet state, the observer does not hold on to any memories. It does not store experiences the way you do. It simply watches, detached, a witness to the unfolding of time and events. You as the self are the one who experiences the world, but the unobservable observer is a silent companion, ever present but never engaged. The paradox of the unobservable observer is that it seems to know everything, yet it does not know in the same way you do. Its awareness is not shaped by the lens of experience. It is not colored by emotions or memories. It simply exists as a constant, a quiet presence that observes without becoming a part of what it observes. How does the self interact with this observer? Are you aware of it in the same way you are aware of your own thoughts, your own feelings, or is it something that exists in the background, a quiet hum, a soft echo of consciousness that you can never truly see but know is always there? The unobservable observer challenges our understanding of consciousness. It suggests that awareness is not necessarily tied to participation. You, the self, are constantly moving through life, experiencing and feeling, but the observer, in its silence, simply knows without involvement. It is both inside and outside of you, a presence that neither belongs nor does not belong. In a way, the unobservable observer is a mirror to the nature of consciousness itself. It exists, yet it does not need to be seen to be real. It is not bound by time, space, or memory. It simply is, a reflection of the purest form of awareness, existing without the need for a self to experience it. What does this say about the nature of your own consciousness? Is your awareness something that is inherently part of you, or is it a form of knowing that can exist independently of the self? The unobservable observer exists outside of the self, yet it is not separate from it. It is part of the experience, yet it does not touch it. You may begin to feel that your own awareness is not confined to you, not tied to the limitations of your thoughts, your body, yourself. It is something larger, something that exists beyond the confines of the individual. The observer, in its silence, reflects the broader, timeless nature of awareness itself. As you contemplate this, you may wonder if there is a deeper layer of consciousness, one that transcends the individual, and is not bound by the cycle of thought and feeling. If the unobservable observer can exist, then perhaps there is a form of awareness that is not just shaped by your experiences, but is simply aware, of everything, without becoming a part of it. The unobservable observer is a reminder of the complexity of consciousness. It is not just the self that experiences, not just the self that knows. There is a presence beyond the self, always aware, always watching, but never seen, never touched by the world it witnesses. This awareness is not dependent on participation. It simply is asterisk, and as you continue to think about this, you realize that perhaps the true nature of awareness is not something that needs to be understood, not something that requires explanation. It simply exists, like the unobservable observer, quietly present in every moment, watching, knowing, but never fully engaged. It is both a part of you, and yet not. Time is not always as we experience it. We live within a steady flow, past to present, present to future, each moment building upon the last. But imagine if time could fold, curve, and shift in unexpected ways. Imagine if your sense of self was not tied to this linear progression, but instead existed across multiple points in time. This is the concept of non-linear temporal identity, a state where your sense of who you are stretches across time, no longer bound by the simple sequence of past, present, and future. In this state, your selfhood becomes something more fluid, more complex, existing in multiple moments at once, never confined to a single point. If your identity is not tied to a single moment in time, what does that mean for who you are? Can you be both the person you were yesterday and the person you will become tomorrow? Are you simply a collection of moments, each one important, yet disconnected from the others, or is there a deeper thread that ties them together? In a non-linear experience of self, memory no longer serves as a linear timeline. Instead, your memories, experiences, and moments blend, overlap, and interact in ways that make it difficult to see where one memory ends and the next begins. Your identity is not a continuous line, but a patchwork quilt of experiences that you live through all at once. This state of temporal fluidity raises questions about change and growth. If you are not defined by a steady line of time, do you still grow? Or are you simply shifting between versions of yourself, experiencing all that you could be without truly evolving? Does growth even make sense in a non-linear state, where every version of you exists simultaneously? Perhaps in this non-linear existence, there is no beginning to you, no end. You are in some ways the culmination of all the versions of yourself that have existed or will exist. Your sense of self becomes a point on a vast multi-dimensional map where every possible moment exists at once, and the boundaries of your identity expand beyond the confines of time. In this state, you might feel both yourself and not yourself, as though you are constantly shifting between past selves and future selves. You could feel the weight of past decisions while simultaneously understanding how the future could change them. Each thought, each feeling, is part of a grand interconnected web of existence that transcends the limitations of time. As you shift between these different temporal states, it becomes clear that your identity is no longer a single fixed thing. It is a process, a flow of moments and experiences that interact with each other. Your sense of self becomes more like a river, constantly flowing, constantly changing, but always part of the same greater whole. Living with non-linear temporal identity means that there is no true moment of self. Instead, you experience a constant unfolding, a continuous recombination of who you are, as though you are simultaneously meeting yourself at various points in your life, each one a reflection of the whole. You are the past, the present, and the future, all at once. The non-linear self challenges the very nature of personal continuity. If you are constantly experiencing yourself from different points in time, what happens to your sense of coherence? You begin to wonder, is continuity simply a construct, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the world, or is it something more, something essential to our experience of selfhood? In a non-linear sense of self, relationships and connections also lose their simple linear nature. You are not just a friend, a partner, a parent at one point in time. You are all of those things always. The moments when you connect with others overlap, intertwining, creating a deep web of interactions that are not bound by any single instance of time. But as beautiful and freeing as this experience might be, it also presents a challenge. If you are not bound to a single moment of time, then how do you make choices? If the past, present, and future are all happening together, how do you navigate through them? How do you know which version of yourself you should be in this very moment? In the non-linear existence of time, everything exists at once. Your choices, your paths are not defined by one sequence of events, but by a multitude of possible outcomes. You are not just the culmination of your past decisions, but also the possibility of future ones, each path open, each one equally real, and equally part of you. This fluidity can also make the experience of time itself feel strange. The present moment is no longer fixed. It is a point of intersection between the multiple layers of yourself, where all versions of you, past, present, and future, meet. The flow of time becomes less about progress and more about the intersections of moments, all equally existing, all equally true. And in that strange intersection of selves, the boundaries of who you are begin to blur. You no longer experience time as a straight path. Instead, you are constantly living within a web of possibilities, where your past, your present, and your future all unfold together. You are everywhere and nowhere at the same time, each moment a piece of a larger whole. Non-linear temporal identity forces us to ask, what is it that truly makes us who we are? Is it our experiences in the moment, the choices we make in the present, or is it the sum of all the selves we've been and will be? If every version of us exists simultaneously, then how do we define the true I? There is an overwhelming sense of freedom in this existence, but also an unsettling realization. If you are no longer bound by the linear flow of time, then your identity is not as fixed as you once thought. It is a constantly shifting, evolving thing, pulled in many directions, shaped by all the versions of yourself that have ever existed or ever will. In this state of non-linear time, you are no longer just one person at one point in time. You are all the versions of you, past, present, and future, coexisting in a single moment. Time becomes something malleable, something fluid, where every possible version of yourself is always with you, always real. You are not just living in one moment, but in many moments, all at once. In a world filled with colors, sounds, and sensations, there is a mystery at the heart of every experience. Imagine a moment where you feel something, an emotion, a sound, the color red, but there is no one there to experience it. What does it mean to feel something if there is no observer? This is the observerless qualia puzzle. Qualia are the raw, subjective experiences of consciousness, the redness of red, the taste of sweetness, the feeling of pain. We feel them deeply, yet we often take for granted the presence of an observer, someone to witness and experience these feelings. But what happens when there is no observer to feel them? Imagine for a moment that everything around you still exists, the colors, the sounds, the emotions, but there is no you there to experience them. If no one is present to observe the sensation, does it still have meaning? Can there be an experience without an experiencer? This is the essence of the observerless qualia puzzle. The puzzle deepens as we consider that these experiences seem to require an observer to exist. Without someone to perceive them, can the experience truly exist? If a feeling of joy arises, but there is no consciousness to feel it, does the joy truly exist? Is the experience just a ripple in the world, without anyone to witness it? It is as if the experience is incomplete without an observer. We are used to thinking of the world as full of sensations that exist because we are here to experience them. But what if the world exists in its own right, with sensations and qualities, but without anyone there to perceive them? Can the world be experienced if no one is there to feel it? If there is no observer, the qualia, the raw experiences seem to lose their significance. They are sensations without meaning, feelings without a mind to attach them to. Without an observer, do they still carry weight, or do they fade into nothingness, like a song heard but never remembered, a color seen but never acknowledged? The paradox lies in the fact that we cannot seem to separate qualia from the self. Every color, every sound, every feeling is intrinsically tied to the one who experiences it. But what if there is no self? What if the self, the observer, is an illusion, or a temporary aspect of something greater? Would qualia still hold their place in the world? Consider a moment of intense sensation, a rush of emotion, or the feeling of the sun on your skin. These experiences are so vivid, so real when you are present to feel them. But what happens when that presence is gone? Do the sensations continue to exist, or do they vanish in the absence of an observer, as if they were never really there at all? This puzzle challenges our understanding of consciousness. We are so accustomed to the idea that experience is personal, that we are the ones who make sense of the world, but in the absence of an observer, where do these experiences go? Are they still valid if no one is there to witness them? Or are they like unfinished stories, lost to time, with no one to tell them? In the observerless qualia puzzle, we are asked to look beyond the self and wonder, what if consciousness is not as tightly bound to the individual as we believe? If experience exists without an observer, then what are we truly? Are we the ones who shape the world, or are we simply part of a greater flow of sensations, each one existing without needing us to define it? Perhaps the key to understanding this puzzle lies in the nature of experience itself. When we think of experience, we think of it as something personal, something that belongs to us. But if the experience of the world does not depend on the self to exist, then how do we understand it? What does it mean to experience, and can we separate that experience from the person experiencing it? As we continue to ponder this, we might realize that the observerless qualia puzzle reveals something profound about the nature of consciousness. It asks us to consider whether the self is the true center of experience or merely a participant in something much larger, a presence that gives meaning to sensations but is not absolutely necessary for them to exist. If sensations and qualia can exist without an observer, then it opens up the possibility that consciousness is not limited to the individual. Perhaps the world is full of experience, and we are merely one way in which that experience is brought to life, one way in which the universe knows itself. The observerless qualia puzzle, in its complexity, suggests that consciousness may be more expansive, more universal than we imagine. Yet even as we explore these ideas, we must admit that the puzzle remains unresolved. How can there be experience without an experiencer? How can qualia exist without someone to perceive them? The answer may lie not in the details, but in the very mystery itself, the space where the self and the world blur together, where experience exists without the need for an observer to claim it. In the stillness of this puzzle, we find ourselves drawn to the question of what it truly means to exist. If we are not the sole owners of our experience, then where do we stand in the vastness of consciousness? The observerless qualia puzzle offers no clear answer, only the invitation to explore the depths of our own awareness and the world that exists with or without us.